Okay, we'll get started in about a minute. Testing, that looks good. Ooh, it's warm in here. Yeah, I got one on that. Okay, good morning. Looks like I got technology working today, so it's going to be a good day. All right, anybody have any questions on your homework? Anything you need me to explain to you? Oops. Where did I go? Hold on, YouTube world. Why is it doing that? All right, guys, hold up. I thought technology was going to work today, but redo this. Okay, Bailey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, let's see if that works. All right. All right. So let me write down Bailey's grade here. All right. So you guys had chapter 7 over between the last class and this one. Over the weekend, you're going to have chapters 8 and 9. 8 is a little more complex, guys. 8 is on nutrition. It's a short chapter, but it's a little detailed. You're probably going to want to make flashcards of the different diets. There's 6 or 7 different diets you need to learn. That's important for CNAs because remember, we do ADLs. Part of ADLs is feeding. So we're the ones that are going to pass trays. We're the ones that are going to help them with snacks. We're the ones that are either going to limit their fluids or encourage their fluids. So nutrition really is kind of our domain, not planning it, but serving it. And we need to understand what our responsibilities are in that because we really are what we eat. Let me get your scores, and I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about the effects of nutrition on the human body. So let me get your scores real quick. Jillian, Shaylin, thank you. Tara.
100. Did you want unit 1 and unit 4 too?
I think I've got those from you. I got 90 on 1 and 100 on 4. Oh, you're talking about the chat. Okay. No, I actually don't collect those scores. Those are for you to basically find out, did you get what you needed from that section? It's showing that I'm sorry, that's a good point. It's showing that we've closed out that section. We've covered all skills in that section. If you can answer those questions, you've got it. Okay. Bernice. Thank you. Gianna. Thank you. Patricia. Thank you. Stephanie. Thank you. Melanie. Thank you. Jessica. Thank you. Cynthia. JC. Thank you. Rachel. Amber. Okay. All right. So let me talk to you just a little bit about nutrition. And this is something that yeah. 1 week of class left, guys. 1 week, 2 classes. If you haven't registered for the test yet, you probably should, because the longer you wait, the more you'll forget. So even though you may not feel ready yet, go ahead and register. You'll have about 3 to 4 weeks from the time that you register until you're testing. That's your practice time. Remember, you can come in this room and practice Mondays and Wednesdays, class days. Right now until 4, after you graduate, it's 1:30 until 4. Okay, good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about nutrition. Anybody ever go to the movies?
Yes.
When you go to the movies, you probably get the popcorn, right? Because that's the whole point of going to the movie is the popcorn. Popcorn tastes really good. But that popcorn usually makes you super thirsty, right? So if you get the popcorn, you got to get the super large drink to go with it because you get really thirsty. So why does that happen? Well, it happens because of salt or sodium. Do you remember when we talked about diabetes and sugar in the bloodstream? You guys remember that? And I said with sugar, you either have to use it with, you have your cells use it, or we store it. We can't excrete it. You guys remember that? Salt is the same way. So, but salt isn't used by the cells very effectively. It's not used for energy. It's used for some processes, but not energy. Salt kind of goes in and out. The problem is that salt really does stay in the bloodstream. Okay. It can't be excreted. Not effectively. Little bits, but not effectively. So the only way to manage sodium in the bloodstream is to dilute it.
Does salt act like fat within the bloodstream? Because I know fat can be hard to lose as well.
No, and you actually don't lose fat from the bloodstream. Fat is nothing more than a storage unit. You know how they're building all of these storage? Like, I'm trying to figure out why we need so many. Like every other corner has a storage unit. Yeah, I know. It's just like, it's a bit baffling to me.
It's a small town.
Right. But you know how they're building all these storage units? Well, those are like fat cells. They're just there to hold glycogen. That's all they do. So like, you see fat on me, that's just there to hold excess glycogen because I took in too many carbs. My body couldn't use them all. So we had to store them. So that's what the fat cells do. They have no function other than storage units. That's it. So the fat really isn't circulating in your bloodstream. Cholesterol does. Now, cholesterol is a little bit different than fat. I know we kind of equate the two, but cholesterol is different from fat. Cholesterol actually comes usually from animal sources. We actually create our own cholesterol because we're animals as well. And cholesterol is in the bloodstream. It's used by a lot of different body processes, but fat is different. Fat cells are nothing more than storage units. Okay. So when you take in too much sodium and you dump all that sodium into the bloodstream, the body can't really get rid of it. It's kind of stuck with it. So we've got all this sodium in our bloodstream, and that takes the place of, other nutrients, right? Because if the bloodstream's full of sodium, we can't really fit much else in there. So the body dilutes the bloodstream, pushes fluid into it. Make sense? So that's how we dilute the sodium level. We push more fluid in the bloodstream. But wait a minute, do you remember blood pressure? We talked about our hose. If we put more water in the hose, the pressure goes up. So when we take in sodium, what does that do to our blood pressure? Raises the blood pressure because your body has to dilute that sodium. So not really a filter, no. It's going to push fluid into the bloodstream to dilute out that sodium. Now, the problem with that is it's going to raise our blood pressure, but it's also going to take fluid from other areas that we might need it. So when you eat a lot of salt, sometimes you'll feel your skin will feel kind of dry, because we're pulling the fluid from our intracellular spaces and putting it into circulation to dilute it. Make sense? So if we've got a patient with high blood pressure, they may be on a low sodium diet. Now, what do you think would happen if we got the trays confused and we gave our low sodium diet person a regular tray? Blood pressure goes up high. Does that have a potential consequence to the patient?
Yes.
So this is why we get concerned about nutrition, because everything we eat is going to have an effect on the system. Whether you're aware of that effect or not, it still occurs. So as CNAs, the dietitians are the ones that are planning the diet because they understand all this. And by the way, to be a dietitian, that's a minimum of a 4-year degree, just learning about food. Most of them have master's degrees, so that's 6 to 8 years, just learning about food. So what you're reading in chapter 8 is literally a 5th grade interpretation. It is so watered down and basic. It's not, I know it's going to seem complex to you, but it's barely scratching the surface because all food is a chemical. And as a dietitian, you have to understand the chemical makeup and how each of those chemicals are going to affect the body. So it's very, very in depth. I always said if I had to do it over again, I'd probably be a dietitian because they make really good money. They don't have to work nights or weekends.
Less stress.
Yeah. They teach people how to eat. I mean, it's really not a bad career option, and they make as much as nurses or more. Oh, yeah. Every long-term care facility has to have a dietitian on staff. And it's one of those careers that nobody really thinks about. No kid is growing up saying, I'm going to be a dietitian when I get older. They may say, I'll be a nurse, I'll be a doctor, I'll be an astronaut, but they never think about dietitians. So it's one of those modalities that's in high demand with little competition. If I had to do it over again, I'd probably look in that direction. But chapter 8 is, it's going to seem complex to you, make flashcards for the diets, but it's, remember, just barely scratching the surface of what dietitians know. So the dietitian is going to be planning the diet. The nurse is going to know what conditions to monitor for and create a care plan instructing us to monitor for these signs. And we are going to be responsible for making sure the right patients get the right diets and understanding that fluid restriction really matters. If your patient's on fluid restriction, sodium content really matters. If your patient is on a low sodium diet, carbohydrate content really matters if your patient is diabetic. So we can't go at this with a really kind of lackadaisical attitude. Who cares? It's everything the patient eats is going to have an effect. Good. Makes sense. Any questions on that? All right. Chapter 9 is on rehabilitation. Some of you will probably go into rehabilitation as a career option. And chapter 9 is going to talk about different types of rehabilitation aids like walkers and canes and adaptive equipment. You're going to learn about physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, those types of things. Rehabilitation is trying to restore the patient to their highest level of function possible. And CNAs are very useful in that arena. All right, so let's get into today. Oops, that's not it. There we go. 1 week of class left. And just to remind you guys, I know I've talked about it before, but just to remind you, we have our live game show on Tuesday. Now, this is going to be relevant to you because we only have 1 week of class left. And that means that your test is coming very shortly. You can see it in the horizon. The game show, I go through 15 practice test questions. So these are test questions that may show up on the state exam. Now, they won't be the exact questions. Nobody can give you those because of test integrity. But what I can do is tell you, according to this category and this checkpoint, this is the type of question you would see. And they're written in the same way that the state exam questions are written. So it's a really fun way to kind of gauge your knowledge to make sure that you have the knowledge you need for the test, but it gives you the opportunity to win prizes too, because we give prizes away to the first and second place because it's live and interactive. And if you don't know how that works, come join us on Tuesday and see, because it's really cool. It is really cool. It's innovative. It's a brand new platform that can be utilized on YouTube to make things interactive. So it's amazing. And we were able to get it on the ground floor. So those of you in YouTube world, I just put our subscribe link in the chat. Right, link in the chat. Okay, so Tika has a question. If I'm ready to take class, I need to go for test scores. Can you help me, please? Tika, I'll answer that at the end of class today. Amber says, hi, good morning. It's Amber. I'll be attending class on Monday. Okay. All right, very good, Amber. And Celine is first time joining, finished CNA class, signed up and watching from New York. Oh, good. Oh, welcome. Welcome. All right, guys, we're going to jump into today's lesson. Today, we're going to learn about transferring from bed to wheelchair. Where is my... Okay, this is going to be on page 50. Apparently, I missed a slide there. It's going to be on page 50 of your book. And on page 50, yeah, I totally missed that one. Don't know what happened. On page 50, we have our care plan at the top of the page. It tells us to transfer the resident from bed into the wheelchair. The resident is unable to walk or take steps. You need to underline that, highlight it, put a star next to it, circle it. I don't care what you do, but draw some attention to it. Unable to take steps. Remember that this is the care plan from the state exam. So for the state exam, your patient is going to be unable to take steps, but you guys are going to be the patient for this. If you look at the bottom of the page, you can see it's a live testing skill. So you're going to be the patient for this skill. If you're the patient, you're going to get a script to follow, just like every other skill. They're going to tell you what to say, but for this one particularly, they're going to tell you what to do. They're going to say when the person stands you up and turns you, you cannot take any steps. So keep that in mind. Okay. This is important for the CNA to know, because if you stand the person up and pivot them and they have to take a step backwards to get to that wheelchair, you did not follow the care plan. What does that do to your score? Yeah, because our patient cannot take steps. So for this skill to work, we've got to bring that wheelchair super close. It's got to be almost touching the patient. I mean, just a hair from touching the patient, so that when you stand them up and spin them, the wheelchair is right there. Good? Makes sense? All right. It says a gait belt or transfer belt is required to transfer this resident. Remember, gait belts and transfer belts, same thing, two different names, because in medicine, one name isn't enough. We need two for everything. And it says the resident will stay in the room. Now, if you were staying in the room, would you want to face a wall?
No.
What would you want to face? Anything but the wall, right? So the door, a window, the TV, anything, but don't get the patient into a wheelchair and then leave them staring at a blank wall. It is mean. It is absolutely mean. So that's why the care plan says the resident will stay in the room. Now, a lot of times when we get people out of bed and into a wheelchair, it's because they're going somewhere. I mean, that's the whole point of a wheelchair, is to make them mobile, right? So they're going somewhere, maybe breakfast, maybe an activity, maybe a test. I don't know where they're going. Don't really care. But for right now, this scene, the end of the scene, they're going to stay in the room. Okay, good. All right, supplies for this one, super easy. They need footwear. They're laying in bed. They probably don't have it on. Very few people are wearing shoes in bed, and they should not be wearing shoes in bed, because remember that whole infection control thing, right? Pathogens. So when we get them sitting on the side of the bed, what do you think we're going to need to do? Yeah, we got to address it. We got to put shoes on. So for the test, if you get this skill to perform, the evaluator is going to pair you up with somebody your body size or smaller, if possible. And even better, if they've got a couple people to choose from, they're going to look for one with slip-on shoes to make this super easy for you. Okay. So looking around, I would see who's got slip-on shoes. I'd look at your body size, and then whoever gets a skill, let's say that you get this skill, I'm going to make you her patient, because you're about probably close to the same body size and you've got slip-on shoes. Good job. Good. Makes sense. Now, it doesn't hurt if you have to bend down and tie shoes, but where do those evaluators want to be? At home, in their pool, drinking their Mai Tais. They don't want to be watching you tie shoes. You mastered that in kindergarten. We can move on now, right? So they try to find ways to make this quicker and easier. Good? Make sense? All right, let's talk about breaks. You should have about an hour and a half, maybe even a little bit more of practice time today. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot today. The first 2 weeks, I talk nonstop for 4 hours at a time, literally nonstop for 4 hours. Now this week, I'm going to back off a little bit. I'm going to teach you, and then I'm going to give you the reins and let you practice what you've learned. By the time we get to next week, you'll have a little bit more practice time. And then the final class on Wednesday, I have some administrative things to go over with you, like how to renew your certification so that you keep it, how to find a job, some things that employers might ask of you. We're going to go over all of those types of things. I'll give you your graduation folders. We'll take a class photo, and then you'll have the rest of the class to practice. So as we go through the program, I talk less, you practice more. Good. So today I don't have a lot to teach you. We have 3 skills to learn. They're all variations of skills you already know, except for feeding. Feeding doesn't follow any rules. Yeah, it's like the rebel. It doesn't follow our rules. So we'll get into feeding in a few minutes, but this is a variation of ambulate with a gait belt that we learned on Monday. Same rules apply. We're going to go over those again, but we have to learn a little bit about wheelchair safety. Okay. Pericare is a washing skill, just like partial bed bath. So those rules apply, but we have to learn a little bit about incontinence. So I won't talk a whole lot today. So let me explain to you about wheelchair safety. So if you look here, wheelchairs, I've got 2 here. Wheelchairs have big wheels. That's why they're called wheelchairs. They have big wheels. Now, some of you have seen the wheelchairs that have 4 small wheels. You guys ever seen those? They're lower to the ground. They got 4 small wheels. Those are actually not wheelchairs. Those are called companion chairs. And the reason that they're lower and have small wheels is it's for those people that can pad along. Because anybody ever shop at IKEA? Mm-hmm. What do you know about those carts? You ever push one of those IKEA carts, like the shopping carts? Huh? Oh man, they're hard. They go like, I run into more shelving units with an IKEA cart. Put me in a grocery store, I'm fine. But because those things have 4-wheel drive, all 4 wheels are independent and then go in any direction. That's the same type of wheels they have on companion chairs. And if you're trying to push one, you're not going to get very far because those wheels are like squirrely. But if you're sitting in it and you're kind of padding along, it can go in any direction you want it to go. So it increases your mobility, right? Big wheels, they're not as mobile, right? They kind of move best in a straight line. If you want to make a quick turn, yeah, you need that wide turning radius because they're big wheels, right? So this is a wheelchair. The smaller chairs are called companion chairs, and they are a little bit different. So wheelchairs, big wheels, have brakes. Now, when you're looking at the big wheel, right in front of the wheel is a little lever system. And I don't know whether you guys can see it, but right here is like a metal bar. See how there's a gap between the metal bar and the wheel? This is unlocked. This wheel can move freely. Over here, you can see the metal bar is pressing into that wheel. It is now locked. The wheelchair cannot move freely. Good. This is how we engage the brakes on the wheelchair. Now, this is the very first thing you need to know about wheelchairs because it is the most important part of wheelchairs, brakes. Now, this lever is what controls the brake. Different wheelchairs work different ways. This one, you can see if you pull it back, the wheelchair brake is engaged. If you push it forward, the brake is disengaged, right? But there are other wheelchairs like that one over there that work just the opposite. We push it forward to engage. Okay. So when you're taking the test, if you get this skill, they're going to show you how to work the wheelchair at the testing center, which way the brakes are engaged. But it's pretty easy to figure out. There's only 2 choices, forward or backward. You just have to find the one that pushes the bar into the wheel. Good. Questions? All right, let's talk about the height difference. So if you're looking at a wheelchair, you can see this is the wheelchair and this is a regular chair. Do you see the difference in height of the seats? That's because wheelchairs are designed to make people mobile. If their feet are flat on the floor, it's hard to make them mobile, which means that when you put a patient in a wheelchair, their feet aren't going to be flat on the floor by design. And that causes their legs to dangle. Now, let's talk about circulation. Gravity on planet Earth is pulling everything down, right? So gravity, my blood gets to my feet, no problem. Doesn't have to work hard at all. My heart pumps and the blood falls. No real stretch there. The problem is that I got to get that blood back up to my heart somehow. And that takes a little bit more work. So inside your veins are little valves. So as the heart beats and pushes the blood down, that blood is going to push the blood in front of it back up. And these little valves in the veins create compartments. So as the blood moves up, it goes into a compartment, the valves close, and the blood can stay there. Next heartbeat, the blood moves up into the next compartment, the valve closes, and the blood can stay there. And this is how the blood climbs back up to your heart. It's like climbing a ladder. Make sense? Good? Okay. So veins are near the surface of your skin. When you look at your arms, see that? That's a vein. That is not an artery. That is a vein. Arteries and veins are different. The best way for me to describe it, you know how in your house, when you turn water on at a faucet, clean water comes out? When you go to the bathroom and you flush the toilet, dirty water goes away, right? Two separate systems. You wouldn't want those two mixed up, would you? No, because if you turn on the tap and dirty water comes out, you're probably not going to want to drink it. You shouldn't drink it. Okay. Two separate systems. Now they're connected at the source, like, the clean water comes out of the faucet, the dirty water goes down the drain, right? Same thing in your body. Arteries take blood to areas of your body. Veins bring dirty blood back to be cleaned. Same system, two different parts to it. Make sense? Veins are close to the surface of your skin. So when you have a patient sitting in a wheelchair whose legs are dangling, this seat is going to press up into the backs of the knees where all the veins are, trying to return the blood from the legs to the heart, and it squishes them. So if the blood can't get back to the heart and gets trapped into the legs are going to swell. Absolutely. Do you think that's good for our patients? Okay, one other problem, and I said this earlier in the program once, you probably didn't catch it, but anytime blood slows or stops, it clots. So if the blood in the legs has slowed down and stopped, what are they at risk of? Blood clots. So this isn't good, right? We need the feet off the floor to push them around in a wheelchair, but we don't want their legs dangling. So that's what these are for. These are foot pedals and leg rests. And these foot pedals and leg rests are super important. A lot of CNAs will put a patient into a wheelchair and just ignore the whole foot pedal leg rest thing and let the legs dangle. That is not good for your patients. The patient's legs need to be supported at all times. That allows circulation to continue. Make sense? Okay, so there's three specific parts to this. So we have the seat. You want to make sure your patient is sitting on the seat as far back as possible with their hips against the back of the seat, right? So that they're adjusted properly. You want to make sure that the leg rests are in the forward position and the foot pedals are folded down to support the feet. So we want the patient seated properly with their legs on the foot pedals and those leg rests locked in place so they don't swing out. Can you imagine for a second? You've got your feet on the leg rests and they just all of a sudden, woo, as you're moving. I mean, that would be like a gym machine with no resistance. It would be very awkward and increase the risk of injury. So when we're looking at this is a top-down view. So when the wheelchair is in use, so when it's in use, this is what your wheelchair should look like. The foot pedals are down to support the feet. The leg rests are locked in the forward position. When the patient or when the wheelchair is stored, we're going to fold those foot pedals up to squeeze the wheelchair together to make it smaller for storage. But you want those leg rests to stay locked in position so they're not flapping all over the place running into people. When we're transferring patients in or out of the wheelchair, those leg rests need to be open to create the widest opening for us, and the foot pedals need to be up so nobody trips on them. So during transfers, we want foot pedals up, leg rests out. When stored, leg rests forward, foot pedals up. When use, leg rests forward, foot pedals down. Good? Okay. You may have a written test question on that. So here's positioning. And this is kind of what messes people up. This is kind of the number one error for this particular skill on the state exam. When we have a patient that we're getting ready to transfer into the wheelchair, you want to make sure the wheelchair is super close to the patient at a slight angle. So this patient, remember, they cannot take steps. So I'm going to stand there. Remember, my feet are going to go in front of and beside. So I would be standing right here. I'm going to lift the patient up, turn them, and sit them down in this wheelchair without them taking steps. Now, if this wheelchair is back here, that's not going to be possible. So you've got to make sure that this is in the right position. But remember, I said on the last slide that the wheelchair, the leg rest needed to be out and the foot pedals needed to be up. You have to do that before you get that wheelchair in place because it's right next to the bed. You're not going to be able to move anything. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if that's a tripping hazard, serious tripping hazard. So good. Make sense? This is probably the hardest part of this particular skill is getting that wheelchair positioned properly. It's going to take you guys a little bit of practice to figure out where to put the wheelchair so your patient doesn't have to take steps. So when you're practicing later today, somebody needs to be watching the patient's feet during the transfer. And if you're watching their feet and you see, oh, the patient took a step, you need to say something. The patient had to take a step. That way, the person doing the skill knows that that wheelchair wasn't close enough. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. So our same rules apply. Do you remember when we were using a gait belt on Monday and we had to help our patients sit down with that gait belt? What did I have to make sure that the patient felt before I lowered them? The chair. Same thing here. You can't sit a patient down into a wheelchair if they don't know it's there. They're going to become stiff and uncooperative. So you could lift them up, pivot them, and then ask them, do you feel the chair? But man, that's a whole lot of time to be holding that patient. So a better way to do this is to tell the patient before you ever lift them, I'm going to lift you up, pivot you around. When you feel the chair behind your knees, I want you to say, sit, and I'll help you sit. So I give them instructions. And then when I have them put their hands up here and I hold the gait belt, I'm going to say, okay, remember, I'm going to lift you up, pivot you over. And when you feel the wheelchair, you're going to say, All right, let's go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Pivot, sit. There we go. So if they know what they need to do, it speeds up the process and it's less stress on you. Good? Okay. But they have to know it's there. They have to know it's there. All right. So we talked about shoe rules last class. We know if the patient's feet hit the floor, we talk about their shoes. Well, this particular skill, we actually have to put the shoes on. So you don't really have to talk about it, but you can. Now, you definitely need to make sure that their feet are flat on the floor, though. Again, I have short legs. Even a bed like this, if I sit on the edge of the bed, my feet are not going to be flat on the floor. I'm still going to be a little tiptoey. So I may have to scoot forward to get my feet flat on the floor before the transfer. You have to make sure that their feet are flat on the floor. Slipper socks are not enough. The number one reason that this skill gets failed is that people don't put shoes on. Because a patient is going to be laying in bed with socks on. And a lot of students forget the whole shoe thing, stand the patient up, turn them around, sit them in the wheelchair, but without shoes, their feet could slide around. They could also get crushed by the wheelchair or your feet. Shoes are important. When we put the gait belt on, we want 4 fingers between the gait belt and patient, just like we did with ambulate. We're going to count to 3 before lifting, just like we did with ambulate. You don't have to ask if they're dizzy or weak because we're just putting them in the wheelchair, but you can ask them afterwards, are you feeling okay? Because this is kind of a sudden thing. If you've been laying in bed for days and all of a sudden you're upright, that can cause fluid shifts, which can make the patient weak or dizzy. So we want to ask, how you feeling? Remember, the patient must always feel the chair before they sit down, and we're going to use those same proper body mechanics for this particular skill. Good? Questions? All right, let me show you a wheelchair. All right. To move a wheelchair, it is helpful if you tilt it like this. If I try to move a wheelchair like this, those little wheels can get all bound up together and make it hard for me to move. So it's better to tilt it up. Wheelchairs are usually closed up in this position for storage. To open a wheelchair, there's no buttons to push or levers to pull or anything like that. You simply pull the handles apart. Notice I raised the wheels off the ground to do that. If you try to do this with the wheels on the ground, you get more resistance and it's harder to pull apart. If you just lift them up off the ground, it's super easy. To close a wheelchair, you lift up on the seat and the 2 halves go back together. So there's nothing, it's all mechanical. Okay. Not all wheelchairs open completely when you open the handles. Some older wheelchairs that are a little bit heavier, you have to push the seat down. Be careful with that, because if you've got a wheelchair that's open a little bit like this and we have to push the seat down to open it the rest of the way, don't put your hands like this, because as this seat expands, it's going to trap your hand between the seat and the armrest. So when you push the seat down, you want to keep your fingers up out of the way. Okay, good. Okay, so leg rests and foot pedals. Can you tilt that down just a little bit? Yeah, just push up on, there you go. Okay, so leg rests and foot pedals. Here. So you guys can see it on the replays. Leg rests and foot pedals. These leg rests are actually locked in place. In order to unlock them, there's a little catch back here that you just pull forward and those leg rests will swing out to the side. and that will open your wheelchair up for transfers. Whether you're putting somebody in or taking them out, those leg rests need to be in the open position. Once we get a patient into the wheelchair, we're going to bring them back forward and you're going to hear them snap in place. So listen. Now they don't move. Foot pedals just fold up and down. That's all they do. So they fold down to support the feet, or they fold up for storage. The brakes here, this is the lever. This one, I pull back to engage the brake. Now the wheelchair won't move. That one, I push forward to engage the brake, and the wheelchair won't move. So each wheelchair works a little bit differently. Okay. But if I want to go somewhere, I've got to disengage the brake to go somewhere. Wheelchairs need to be locked unless they're actively in motion. That is a principle. Wheelchairs must be locked unless they're actively in motion. Now, this is a safety principle. Floors are rarely completely level, especially in Florida. Because in Florida, we build on sand. And as that sand gets compressed, it shifts. And we end up with foundations that crack a little bit. That little bit of cracking, totally normal, your house is fine. But that little bit of cracking is going to affect the level of the floor. So if I have a wheelchair with a 150-pound person in the wheelchair and the floor is not level, they are going to start rolling and they'll pick up momentum because we have weight. The only thing that's going to stop them is whatever they run into. Could be a wall. Could be a flight of stairs. Could be another patient. Could be me. So if the patient is in the wheelchair, unless it's actively in motion, it should be locked. Now, we also have to have the wheelchair locked when we're putting people in and taking them out so it doesn't roll away from under us. So our rule is the wheelchair must be locked unless it's actively in motion. That's a safety principle. It could also show up on the written exam. Okay, good. Questions? No? So here are the checkpoints for this particular skill. Of course, like everything, we're going to follow the care plan. We're going to do our opening. We're going to evaluate if we need gloves. Now, for the test, you are transferring somebody who is fully clothed and holding onto all of their own body fluids like a champ, and probably doesn't have any open areas that you're going to be near. So for the test, would you need gloves for this skill? No. In a clinical setting, any of those could change. Your patient may not be fully dressed. Would you need gloves? Your patient may have leaky somethings. Would you need gloves? Your patient may have wounds, rashes, sores, or incisions. Would you need gloves? So this is not based on the skill, is it? It's based on the patient. And then we have shoe rules, which we just went over, skill specific, and the closing. So there's really not a whole lot here as far as principles, not when you look at partial bed bath. Remember that? We had all of them except for shoe rules. This one's a little bit easier, fewer principles. And remember, these are in all skills, every skill. So the checkpoint specific things we need to look at here is we're going to bring the wheelchair near the bed. We want the foot pedals out of the way. We're going to pivot the patient to sit on the side of the bed and dangle. We're going to have put their shoes on and have their feet flat on the floor. we're going to put that wheelchair at an angle and lock it. Now, this gets a little confusing for students because remember I said here, we're going to bring the wheelchair near the bed. And then way down here, I say we're going to put it in an angle close to the bed. Well, why do I have that on there twice? We have to bring the patient closer to us and then pivot them so they're sitting on the side of the bed. If I've got the wheelchair at an angle locked close to the bed in its final position before transfer, when I go to pivot that patient to sit on the side of the bed, that wheelchair is in the way. Their legs are going to hit it, probably cause an injury. So we want it in reach, but we're not going to do the final position until our patient is pivoted and their shoes are on. Then we'll put that wheelchair in its final position and lock it for transfer. So here near the bed, here final position. We want to get that gait belt around the patient. We're going to check it with 4 fingers. We're going to tell the patient when they feel the wheelchair behind them to say sit. On the count of 3, using proper body mechanics, we're going to lift, pivot. They'll say sit. We'll sit them down in the wheelchair. We'll remove the gait belt like we do with every other gait belt. Make sure that the patient's hips are against the back of the seat. Adjust the leg rests and foot pedals so they're good to go. Make sure the wheelchair is locked before we leave. Give them a call light and do our closing. Okay. All of those checkpoints. Good. All right. Can I ask you to take your shoes off and just put them on the side of the bed there and lay down in the bed for me?
I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe throughout our practice time, you just give me an example of you, I guess, unlocking and closing the other wheelchair so that we push forward.
It's the brakes are this one, we pull back, the other one you just push forward.
Oh,
It's just the brakes.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
But yes, I can. All right. So for the test, if you get this skill, the evaluators are going to teach you how to use that wheelchair. Okay, how to open it, how to engage the brakes, how to work the leg rests and foot pedals. They have to orient you on their equipment. Just like when you go to work. Every wheelchair is a little bit different. So when you go to work, they're going to have to teach you how to use their equipment. Okay, nothing is standardized across the entire United States, not even McDonald's. Okay, so for the test, your wheelchair will be within reach before you start, but not super close to the bed. So kind of like here, it's in reach, it's in my orbit, but it's going to kind of be out of the way because I still have to do my whole opening. I got to get the patient pivoted to sit on the side of the bed. So we got a lot of work to do before we need that wheelchair. So here we go. Hi, Ms. Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Fantastic. Do you feel like getting up and into the wheelchair? Okay, I'm going to close your curtain. Let me go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. So I have clean hands. I need to get my supplies, which in this case is a gait belt. So I'm going to get my gait belt from the storage unit. And I'm just going to put it where I can reach it in a few minutes. I'm going to get my wheelchair prepped because once my patient is sitting on the side of the bed, I don't want to leave them. So right now the leg rests are in the forward position. I can't have that because that's a tripping hazard. So the first thing I'm going to do is open my wheelchair and swing these leg rests out of the way. Just like that. I'm not going to lock it yet because I got to get it into position in a minute. I'm going to bring it in reach, but not so close. Whoops, your shoe. But not so close that it's going to interfere with my moving the patient. All right, Miss Jones, I'm going to sit you up on the side of the bed. I'm going to do all the work. All you have to do is relax. But I need you to scoot your whole body a little closer to me. So you're close to the edge of the bed. Keep coming a little bit more. There we go. Can you put your arms over your chest and then just relax? Now, a lot of you don't think that you can do this. This doesn't take a lot of upper body strength. It actually, we're going to use more torque and momentum than we are strength. So I'm going to put this arm underneath her shoulder as far as I can. In fact, her far shoulder should be in the palm of my hand if I do it right. This arm goes over the knees. So I should look like this. It's not under the knees. If you try to go under the knees, you're trying to push with this arm and pull with this one, and that torques your back. If you go under the shoulders and over the knees, it's just a pivot. Okay. So we got to get close. All right. So I'm going to put my hand under your shoulders, all the way across, over the knees. Now I'm bending at the knees, and my legs are pressed against the bed for torque. And on the count of 3, we're going to turn. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Go ahead and relax. It's a pretty fast turn. So I'm going to keep my hand on the patient just to make sure. Are you dizzy at all? Okay. Let's go ahead and get your shoes on. Go ahead and slide your foot in. Okay. Go ahead and put this shoe on. Slide your foot in. Okay. Are your feet flat on the floor? Okay. I'm going to put the gait belt around your waist. This is going to help me get you into the wheelchair. Okay. So I'm going to put the gait belt on. We're going to put it through the first guard by the alligator teeth. We're going to pull it till it's snug. 4 fingers. Lock it in place and just tuck that tail. I'll bring the wheelchair super close. Super close. Can you go up to the front? Do you see that red light on the little controller? Right there in front, right under the TV. See the red light? Yep, press 2 right next to it. Okay. Super close. Can you guys see that on there? Super close. It is almost touching her. Now I need to lock the wheels. It's at a slight angle. I'm going to lock the wheelchair. And then I'm going to transfer you into the wheelchair in a pivot. Now, ideally, her feet should not take steps. Okay. It's going to pivot, but she shouldn't take a step. So I'm going to have you put your hands on my shoulders. I'm going to reach around and grab the back of the gait belt. On the count of 3, we're going to stand and turn. When you feel that seat behind the back of your legs, I want you to say sit. Okay. So go ahead and put your hands up here. And on the count of 3, we're going to lift and turn. When you feel the seat, say sit. Got it? 1, 2, 3. Very good. Now I can remove the gait belt. Go ahead and lift up this arm for me. There we go. Now I can't swing those leg rests around because they're pressed up against the bed. So I'm going to unlock. Can you lift your feet up for me? Thank you. Can you hit number 1 again? I have camera assistance. Okay. So I'm going to swing her around so she's facing forward. I'm going to snap those leg rests in place, lift her leg from below, and position her foot on the foot pedal. So I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. I'm going to lock the wheelchair. Up. I'm going to lock the wheelchair. I'm going to swing that leg rest into place, lift her leg from below, pull the foot pedal down and position her foot on the foot pedal. Are your hips all the way back? Okay, are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? Okay, notice she's not facing the wall. Okay. All right, let me go put this away. Here's your call light. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to hit the red button, okay? I'm going to open the curtain, wash my hands. My environment is clean. Think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections. My skill is done. Thank you. Let me fold those up for you. Questions? The sad part of this, it's not a hard skill, guys. It really isn't. It's probably one of the easier skills. It's a physical skill, mechanical skill. It's one of the easier skills, though. It's a frequently failed skill. Yes. And the real problem is that this skill causes a lot of patient injuries because it's not done properly. Each one of these checkpoints counts big. If you don't have that wheelchair locked when you try to put somebody into it, it's going to roll away. If you don't support the legs, they could swell and develop blood clots. If you don't make sure the wheelchair is close enough so you can pivot the patient and they have to take a step. There's a lot of things here that could potentially trip you up. So this is one that you need to practice because chances are you don't have a wheelchair sitting at home waiting to practice with. Okay, so this is one you really need to practice here because there's a lot of little tiny points that could trip you up. It's not a hard skill once you learn. Okay, good. All right, YouTube world. Let me give you, oh, thank you, Mai. Thank you, Mai. Okay, so there is our link for transferring a patient out of bed and into a wheelchair. Okay, so now we're going to move on to feeding. This is on page 75 of your book. All right, our care plan at the top of the page says to feed the resident a snack, does not say meal. Keep that in mind. Who is unable to feed him or herself. The resident is sitting in a chair in an inappropriate position for eating. Underline that. Then it tells us to document the intake on a food and fluid intake form. So if you look at the middle of the page here, you can see the food and fluid intake form. Yes, you're right, Patricia. It is tiny. Go to page 120. There's a bigger version of it. So you have this to be able to practice with. These are the actual documentation forms from the state exam. So you're able to practice using the same forms you'll see on the exam. Okay? Good. I've thought of everything for you. All you have to do is practice. That's the one thing I can't do for you. I wish I could. I wish I could make it that easy, but it's the one thing that you have to do is actually practice. Okay, so I want to break this down sentence word by word because each word here is important. And I think that it helps you understand the skill a little bit better. So it says feed the resident a snack. Look down here for a second on the documentation form. You see you have two choices. You have meal and you have snack. So on the state exam, our care plan tells us that we're feeding them you may consider a cup of pudding a meal. I don't, but you might. But that's not what this care plan says. The care plan says we're feeding them so that cup of pudding is so we're going to check off. Got it. Okay. It's amazing how many times that gets filled out wrong. Unable to feed himself or herself. We're going to do it for them. This is where it gets tricky. When you're playing around with this, when you're feeding somebody at home, when you're pretending in the classroom, when you're a patient for the test, this isn't real. We know it's not real. We know that as soon as you leave, you can go drive through your local burger place and feed yourself. We're pretending, make believe. So your mindset's completely different. When you are a real patient who really cannot feed themselves for real, this hits way different. This is the hardest skill to be a patient for in real life because eating is the first thing you become independent at. You learn to hold your bottle long before you know what hungry is. You pick up diced peaches and Cheerios off a high chair tray long before you are sitting on your own. Eating is the first thing you become independent at. And when you lose the ability to feed yourself, it makes you feel dependent in a way no other skill can. This affects patients psychologically in a very big way. Does that make sense? This is super important for us to understand because it's going to affect how we approach this skill. And it's going to affect how we're graded on this skill. So everything I'm about to tell you on how to do this skill, keep that in mind. That losing the ability to feed yourself affects you psychologically in a way that no other skill does. And then it'll start to make sense why some of these checkpoints are so important. Good? Makes sense? Okay. It tells us the patient is sitting in a chair, yay, in an inappropriate position for eating, not yay. Now, no care plan in the history of anywhere will ever tell you your patient's in an inappropriate position. This is just for the test. Right? They expect you to eyeball the patient and see, are they sitting up straight? Or, can I feed this person? But the test is going to give you that extra prompt to tell you, hey, pay attention. This patient is not sitting up. So for the test, what do you think you need to do? Yeah, at the very least, tell them, sit up, right? We can't just ignore this. Now, the reason for this is that during the test, you're going to be a patient or you, and your idea of slouching might be completely different than mine, right? So put your hands, So that might be her idea of slouching. Doesn't really look inappropriate. Every 12-year-old that's ever sat at my table and eaten has eaten in that position, right? That doesn't look inappropriate to me, but my care plan said inappropriate. So I have to address it. Do you guys understand that? Don't rely on your eyeballs for the test. You have to say, can you sit up straight, please? We don't have to physically manhandle them. We can just ask them, sit up straight. Yay. But in a clinical setting, you are required to look. Are they slouched? Are they slumped? Are they leaning? Are they doing anything that would make you think, hey, this is a safety problem? Now, if you can't get the patient sitting up straight, who do you think you need to tell? Yeah, don't ignore it and just try to shovel food in their mouth and hope for the best. Is the best usually doesn't show up. Its cousin, the worst, is the one that usually makes an appearance, right? Okay. And then we have to remember to document. This is one of our 4 documentation skills. You will get one of these 4 for the state exam. You will get pulse or respirations or feeding or emptying the drainage bag, which we'll learn on Monday. You are going to get one of those 4. This one only shows up on one care plan set though. So you only have a 1 in 11 chance of getting this skill. Now, for the test, if you're the patient, you are going to be fed a single serve pudding or applesauce cup. If you don't like pudding or applesauce, try to choke it down. If you are allergic to pudding or applesauce, let the evaluator know. We don't want you going into anaphylactic shock during the test. So there's a difference between, yeah, I'm not a big pudding fan, or I could die if I eat that pudding. Big difference. Now, as the patient, you're actually going to be given instructions for this skill, and they're going to tell you to only take 4 bites. That's it. 4 bites. And then I want you to say, you're done, you're full. Just refuse from that point. You're not going to take any more than 4. Okay, 4 bites. Now, ideally, the spoon should only be half full. So even if you don't like pudding, you probably could choke down 4 half spoonfuls. Right? Right. Good. It's amazing how many people try to get out of this skill. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm all about the free snacks. Yeah, I'll be your patient. No problem. But it is amazing how many people try to get out of this. So don't be that person. Remember, those evaluators want this to go as smooth and quick as possible so they can get home and float in their pools with their Mai Tais at 11 a.m. Right?
You don't want to ruin it for the other person either.
No, you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so let's go over our rules. I told you that for this skill, it doesn't follow any of our rules. It is the black sheep of the skill family. It is the rebel. So for this skill, we don't use a barrier because our food tray is a barrier. The tray is separating your food from that table surface. So no barrier for this skill. We don't close the privacy curtain. We close the privacy curtain for everything we do, even ambulating a patient. Even if I'm going to stand somebody up and walk them, I still have to close that privacy curtain because they may not be fully dressed. We may be standing them up and then putting a gown on their backside so they're not, mooning the whole unit. So we close the privacy curtain for absolutely everything we do except feeding. Now, why would that be? Eating is a social event. You gather in groups to eat. You have conversations while you eat. Yes, I know you're not talking with your mouth full, but you still have conversations. So imagine after class, we all head over to Cody's for buy one, get one fajitas on Wednesdays. Yeah, I'll be there at 1. So we all go over to Cody's. Now, there's 60 other people in Cody's, all there for the buy one, get one fajitas. And we walk in, and when we walk in, it's dead silent. How awkward would that feel? Awkward, right? When you go into a restaurant, there's conversation. When you sit down at a table, you're engaging in conversation. When you're eating, you're chewing, she's talking. When she's swallowing, you're talking. You talk during eating. You're not talking with your mouth full, but you still have a conversation. Imagine how awkward it would be to eat with other people in total silence. Yeah, so eating is a social event. We rely on food to engage in social activities, but it goes beyond that. All of your major life milestones are celebrated with food. Baby showers. There's cakes and little baby cupcakes and all kinds of food, right? Weddings, food, funerals, food, graduations, food, birthday parties, food. There's food at family reunions. There's food at every social event, right? When we pull that privacy curtain, we are blocking the patient off from socialization. What do you think that's going to do to their appetite? They're not going to want to eat. And what you said, I'm leaving, if you walked into the restaurant and it was silent, that's how they feel. It's awkward. Now, all eyes are on them. Absolutely. Remember, they can't feed themselves. So this is affecting them already psychologically. If you close that curtain, it makes them feel like they're isolated, like there's something wrong with them, and it will affect their appetite. So we don't close the privacy curtain for this skill. Does that make sense? We have to sit. It's the only skill that you are required to pull up a chair and have a seat. If we stand over somebody and shovel food into their mouths, that makes them feel rushed, dependent, intimidated. This is not a good position. So you actually have to pull up a chair and have a seat. There's no other skill that requires you to sit, but this one does. You have to sit at eye level with your patient. And you must have a conversation. Now, every other skill that we do, we tell the patient what we're doing. I'm lifting your arm above your head like you're asking a question and back down to the bed. I'm rolling you on your side so I can change the bottom sheet. We're telling them what we're doing because we're making them partners in their healthcare, right? You don't want to say, okay, I'm getting pudding on a spoon and lifting it to your lips and you're opening your mouth. Oh my gosh. Awkward. That makes the patient feel like they're 3 months old. It's demeaning. So you can't do that for this skill. This skill requires a real conversation. It doesn't have to be factual for the test. You can make something up. They're showing a movie on the big screen later today. I hear it's Casablanca. Never seen it. Have you seen it? Do you know what it's about? They're playing bingo in the activity room. The jackpot's up to $2.10. Mabel thinks she's going to win. Did you see those little kids come in for the 4th of July parade? They were all dressed up in red, white, and blue in the lobby. Weren't they adorable? I don't care what you talk about. Just talk about something. Make it up. But you do need to have a conversation. Now, in real life, I like feeding patients. And let me tell you why. A long time ago, I was working in a nursing home. I'm talking 20 something years ago. I was working in a nursing home and we had a patient who was dropping weight. And she got down like under 90 pounds. She was dropping weight. And, you go back and look at her food logs and it was refused 25%. I mean, she's just barely picking at her food. And I was working on the day shift, and day shift has 2 meals. And most older people eat their bigger meals earlier in the day. They don't eat well in the evening. So evening meals, we generally, we don't get too concerned about 25, 50%, but during the day, they should be, eating significantly. And, looking at her meal logs, and it's the same thing every day. So when she ate in her room, she was fed. And when the aide was feeding her lunch, I just happened to walk by the room and kind of glance in to see what was happening. Now, the patient is sitting in bed. The aide is standing beside the bed, something like this. Okay, patient sitting up in bed, and she's watching TV. So after a bite or two, your patient's like, I'm done. I don't want any more. Don't want any more. Because the patient felt like she was an imposition. The CNA treated her like she was a job, not a person. So I sent the CNA out of the room. We're going to have a conversation later. Trust me, we will. And I pulled up a chair and I turned the TV off. And I sat down facing the patient and I went, oh, Miss Martha, it has been a day. My feet are killing me. Do you mind if I sit here for a little while? It would help me out tremendously. She's like, no, honey, do what you need to do. So I said, what do we have here? Oh, this looks good. You want to try a bite? Started feeding her. After a bite or two, she's like, you're busy. I'm good. I'm like, oh no, don't send me away yet. I am so tired. I just want to sit for a minute. If you keep eating, I get to sit here. She ate that entire plate of food. Now, what was the difference? Yeah, I treated her like a human. Absolutely. This is important. Conversations are important. I like to look around my patient's environment for clues. We don't take our skeletons from our closet and put them on the walls. If something is on the wall, people are willing to talk about it. If you look up on my bookshelf there, you'll see that I have a picture of me and my husband in front of a cruise ship. That means that I am willing to talk about it. Ask me about cruising, I'll tell you. I am a chronic cruiser. Yes. We actually had the year of 7 cruises one time.
That's awesome.
So, I've got stories. But it's a picture displayed because I'm willing to talk about it. Your patients in an environment will have things that they are willing to talk about. All you got to do is look around. Now, if it's an older woman, I look on the walls. Most of them will have a framed picture of a man in uniform and a woman that looked amazing. These women, guys, they put us to shame. Seriously. They didn't go to the mailbox unless their hair was done and their lipstick was straight. Now we go to Walmart in pajamas and slippers. I'm not sure what happened. But it's no wonder that men are starting to look at us and go, I could do better. You know? Right. But these ladies had it together, right? They did. They had it together. So I'll look at that picture and I'll go, oh my gosh, did you know them? Were they like movie stars or something? And she'll sit up straighter and she'll go, oh no, that's me. Oh, I see it. Oh my gosh. Wow. Where were you when that picture was taken? Who was he? Was he just a sailor guy? And no, he's my husband. You married him? Wow. What was that courtship like? Oh, wait, don't tell me. Right. I can spin that out to a whole conversation off of one picture. You have to learn the art of talking to people. Now, if there are no pictures, I have conversation starters. One of my favorites is, tell me about the most exciting place you've ever been. Now, all of you are starting to think, I don't know, what's the most exciting place I've ever been, right? So now you're starting to think about the answer to that question. And you probably have 2 or 3 that you could pick from. Now, sometimes your patients will surprise you. Years ago, I was in home care and I went into an assisted living facility to take care of wounds on a patient's legs. And this was a very extensive wound care process. It took me about 45 minutes. And this woman was in her late 80s, still very much with it, but had to have some help. That's why she was in assisted living. So I pull up a stool and we're settling in because it's going to be 45 minutes. So I got to have a conversation with her. I'm not going to do this in silence. So I asked her, one of my conversation starters, what's the most exciting place you've ever been? And her reaction was, oh, honey, I've never been anywhere. Now, this was in Citrus County in Lecanto. And I said, you've never been anywhere? Like anywhere? She says, no, I've never been out of Citrus County. No way. No way. You've never been to Ocala? She says, no. And then she says, well, that's not entirely true because I was born in Brooksville, but I don't remember that. Oh my gosh. Now I'm pulling up a chair and settling in because this is about to get good. This is somebody who has lived in the same place for 90 something years, has never left that place. Don't you think Citrus County, now I know it's a small county, but don't you think Citrus County has changed in 90 years? She remembers when the first road got paved. She remembers when the first McDonald's went in. She remembers when the first car dealership showed up. She remembered the two families in Inverness that were rivals, and how the son from one family was supposed to marry the daughter from the other family, and one of them got cold feet. And it created a scandal that you had never seen before. People talked about it for years, and I got all of the dirt. She was somebody that did not think that she had anything to share. And it turned out to be one of the most interesting conversations I have ever had with a patient. I met a man that was knighted by the Queen of England. I met a man who was a engineer on the Apollo mission to the moon. It's amazing the stories that your patients have. All you have to do is give them an opportunity, something to talk about. We all create memories. You have experiences and you create memories. But have you ever stopped to think about what those memories are for? What is memory? Why do you create memories? What purpose do they serve? They might bring you joy or comfort or sadness sometimes, but those memories really are not for you. They're for you to share with other people. So can you imagine going through your entire life, building up all of these memories, getting to the end of your life, and nobody wants to hear them? That would make you feel like your life was not worthwhile. So having conversations with patients is actually just as important as doing Pericare or as hand and nail care or changing an occupied bed. This is what brings humanity to the work. So I like feeding patients because it gives me a chance to slow down, sit down, and have those conversations to get to know my patients. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So having a conversation is vital. For the test, you get to make something up. Don't care what you do. You're only giving them 4 half spoonfuls, right? It's not going to be a long process, but make sure that you're trying to have a conversation. Okay. Good. All right. Some different rules here. We're going to offer a hand wipe before we feed our patient. Now, I know that we're feeding them. I get it. We're doing the work. Why do they have to wash their hands? 2 reasons. Just because we're feeding them doesn't mean they're immobile. Did not say immobile in our care plan, did it? Just said unable to feed themselves. So if food should start to fall from their face, they may reach up and try to push it back into their mouth. Do you want them to do that with unclean hands? No. We need to make sure they have clean hands if we're feeding them, but it also works toward ritual. Most people wash their hands before they eat. It's part of the eating ritual. It stimulates the appetite. So we need to make sure they have a hand wipe before we start feeding them. We're going to offer a clothing protector. We do not call it a bib. This is not a child. This is not a bib. But we are going to offer a clothing protector. Me, I need one. I wear everything I eat. Everything. My grandmother, if you try to put one of those on her, she would whack it away from you and tell you, I am not a child. Do not treat me like one. So we have different ends of the spectrum here. So we're going to offer a clothing protector, but let our patient make the final decision. We want to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 to 3 bites. Now, this is important. People do not all eat the same. Some of you don't like your foods to touch. Some of you like your corn and mashed potatoes mixed. Those are 2 different people. Some of you eat all of one thing on your plate before you move to the next thing on your plate. Some take a bite here, a bite there, and all willy-nilly around the plate. Those are not the same people. Some eat salad before the meal. Some eat salad after the meal for digestion. Those are your Europeans, by the way. Those are not the same people. Your eating preferences, you probably weren't even aware of them before I just talked about it. Your eating preferences are not the same as your patient's. So we need to be aware that everybody has different eating preferences. The most bizarre one that I came across in my career is there was a little old lady. She was my little Southern Belle lady. And if we served anything that required her to use her hands, she wouldn't eat, like hot dogs, pizza, hamburgers. If she had to bring it up to her mouth, she wouldn't eat it. And so it was just a little weird. I'd never seen that before. So I asked her family and they said, oh, no, that's culturally inappropriate. Ladies do not take bites out of food. You have to cut it up and present it with a fork. You don't take bites off of. So yeah, very, very. I had never heard that. Now I'm a Southern girl, but had never heard that before. Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So, well, that's helpful for me to know, because if we're serving a hot dog, then I'm going to make sure that it gets cut up for her and that she eats. Does that make sense? So we have to understand that cultural considerations are going to play a part here too. So we're going to ask our patients, what do you want first? What do you want next? How do you want to eat? Don't assume that you have all the answers for them. This also goes with liquids. So some people drink before they eat. My aunt did this. She drank a glass of water before every meal, and she swore it's what kept her thin. I've tried it, doesn't work for me. Right? But she would drink a glass of water before every meal, filled her up. My husband doesn't drink at all with a meal. He drinks after a meal. Now, me, I have very little saliva, so I have to drink with a meal. Otherwise, my food doesn't go down. Okay. So 3 different types of people. We're not all the same. Does that make sense? You probably never stopped to think about it before now, but now you need to think about it. Now, when it comes to pureed foods, we need to understand that if your patient has a pureed food, that means that we've chopped up their food so they don't have to chew it. That doesn't alter the taste. It alters the texture, but not the taste. So I was working in hospice and I went in to see one of my patients. She was a stroke patient. She also had cancer and she was nonverbal from the stroke. She also had complete right-sided weakness, limitations on her left. She was pretty impaired and she had to be fed. She was still very mentally with it. Okay. So she could make her displeasure known through facial expressions and grunts because she was nonverbal. So I went in to see her one day and she's in the dining room being fed by a staff member. And I looked at the plate and it was this big gray glop on the plate. I'm like, oh, Mary, what are you eating? That does not look very appetizing. And she she rolled her eyes up and turned her head away, and I could tell she didn't like it either. So I asked the CNA, I said, what is, what's for lunch today? What is that? And she said, oh, I think the menu is Salisbury steak, potatoes, and beets. I said, okay, but what is that? She said, Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets. You mixed it? She says, well, yeah, it's pureed. It has no taste. Oh, no. Would you eat Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and beets mixed together? And she goes, oh, no, that's gross. Don't mix it. It alters the texture, not the flavor. No wonder Mary's not eating. Let's go get her a new tray. Okay. So we have to be careful about our own preconceived ideas. They may not be right. Let's get clarification before we start mixing stuff on a tray, especially with our nonverbal patients, because they may not be able to tell you what's wrong. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine beets mixed with anything. Anything. No. No. All right. We're going to let our patients lead. We're going to feed slow. The spoon should only be half full. And we're not going to use any childlike feeding techniques. So no planes, trains, or automobiles, guys. I am going to tell you. So YouTube, don't listen to this because it's going to get me into trouble. There are some patients. I use a lot of humor, guys. You've seen that up until now. I use a lot of humor in my nursing too, because laughter really is the best medicine. And I find that if I'm relatable to my patients, we can connect a lot easier. I use a lot of humor. And there are patients that I will use planes, trains, or automobiles, right? But not everybody. I've got to get to know the patient first and kind of find out what their personality is before I go there. I would not do that to my grandmother. Ever. She was very prim, very proper, and no. But there are other people that I could get to laugh and smile and relax a little bit and connect with. So I know that it says it here, and we're not going to do it for the test, and we're not going to do it right off, but there are some patients that you're going to get to know that you'll be able to play around with a little bit and just make it human, right? Not demeaning, not degrading, human. Good? Questions? All right, so let's talk about meal percentage. So if you look at the form in the middle of page 75, you'll see that we are going to check a box telling the evaluator how much our patient ate. So this is on a quarter scale. 100 means they ate it all, 100%. Clean plate club. 75 means they ate most of it. Almost all, not quite, but almost. 50, they ate half. 25, they picked at it. 0, they refused it. So you're going to try to estimate. This is an estimate, guys. There's nothing scientific. Do not write 37.5%. Okay. This is a quarter scale. This is all we have to work with. This is it. Don't add any numbers in here, right? Quarter scale. So you're going to estimate how much the patient ate on this scale. Now, we are feeding somebody for the test 4 half spoonfuls of pudding. We're going to get right in here for our documentation. Good? Okay. If you get to 50%, those spoons were not half full. For half full spoons. Good. We use this for all food in most settings, the quarter scale. Liquids are measured differently. I'm going to show you liquids. For the test, you're going to use the same scale, 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. And liquids could be anything. They might refuse. They might drink it all because they're nervous because they're testing. I don't know what's going to happen for the test.
but food should always be 25% for the test. Does that make sense? Everybody good with that? But liquids are usually measured a different way in a clinical setting. We're going to get to that in a minute, but let's see if we together can figure out what our percentage is. So this is an activity. So remember our quarter scale up here, right? So if this is what we started with, some Jell-O cubes, a sandwich, and a thing of broccoli. And this is what we picked up after eating. What do you think, based on this scale, what do you think the percentage was? 25%. Yeah, they kind of picked at it. This one, they ate, I don't know, about half of the broccoli, about half of the sandwich, about half of the Jell-O. So we would call that half of it. Yeah. So what about this one? Yeah, almost all.
100?
Yeah, 100. We could call this the Clean Plate Club. Yeah, because nobody likes the salts. It's okay. So you want to remember, this isn't scientific. You wouldn't say 98%. So we're going to find the closest one. Good. So page 74 in your book has an activity there in the first column. Go ahead and take a moment and fill out 1, 2, 3, and 4. What do you guys think? Yes, that is right, Celine. All right, so number 1, that one's pretty easy. That's the Clean Plate Club. So that's 100%. Number 2 would be 50%. You guys get 50? Number 3 is 75. And number 4 is 25. You guys see how that works? Does that worksheet help you with estimation? All right. Now let's move on to liquids, because liquids are a little bit different. So liquids for the test, quarter scale, just like we learned. They take a couple sips, 25. If they drink half the cup, 50. If they drink most of it, 75. If they drink all of it, 100. That's all the same. But in a clinical setting, we measure fluids differently, especially if our patients are on intake and output. Now, intake and output is when we measure all fluids going into the patient and everything coming out of the patient, and they should be roughly equal within like 200 cc's of each other. That's, liquid in, liquid out. Pretty equal. So in order to figure that out, if we have a patient on intake and output, that means we have to physically measure everything that goes in. And since CNAs do all ADLs, this is going to be us. So in order to learn this, we have to learn the ratio. 1 ounce is worth 30 cc's. Now, this is important in the United States because we, for some reason, insist on using ounces. Everybody else in the world uses the metric system. So we in America get to learn an extra step here, guys. So most of your prepackaged items, like that bottle, if you hold it up, you'll see how many ounces. So is it what, 24? Okay, 30 ounces. And right beside it will tell you how many mLs. What does it say? So 900 mLs. Yours, it's a prepackaged item. So yours is probably 15.9 ounces. Okay, 16 ounces. And how many mLs? 400. Okay, 473. So the package, okay, there's one. What's yours?
23.7.
Okay, 23.7 ounces. And how many mLs? 700. So our prepackaged things already tell us. So our milk cartons will tell us. Our juice cartons will tell us. Where we run into problems is when we give them cups. So when you go to work at a certain location, one of the things that you're going to want to learn in orientation is how many ounces do our cups hold? Are they 6 ounces? Are they 8 ounces? How many ounces do our coffee cups hold? Usually 6 or 8. 12 is big. But you need to know how many ounces do our cups hold. And then you're going to do the conversion when you document I's and O's. So 1 ounce is worth 30 cc's. So if we have an 8-ounce cup of fluid, 8 times 30 is 240. So that gives us 240 cc's. If we have 6 ounces of coffee, 6 times 30 is 180. So that gives us 180 cc's. So remember, pre-packaged items will list ounces and mLs. Just read the mLs. You don't have to do the conversion. When you go to a facility, their cups, you're going to have to know how many ounces it is. Good. So if you look at the second column there on page 74, toward the bottom, we have 6 ounces of juice. So how many mLs would that be? 180. 8 ounces of milk. That's a pre-packaged. So what can we do? Look at the carton and it tells us 240. 12 ounces of coffee, and that's what I needed to get going this morning. 360. So it's important to note that cc's and mLs are exactly the same thing, just 2 names for 1 item. Have we heard that before? Right? That is medicine, 2 names for 1 item. cc's, mLs, same thing. So it doesn't matter how you document mLs or cc's, but when you're in a clinical setting, you're going to document all the fluid that the patient took in, and then you're going to have to add it up at the end of your shift to get a total. So if you add up 180, 240, and 360, what do you get? 780. So our total intake for this shift is 780. You will have a math question on the state exam. You will either have your patient drank 4 ounces of juice, how many mLs will be recorded? So 4 times 30 is 120. Or your patient took in 6 ounces of juice, or it would actually give you the cc's. So 180, 240, and 360. What is the total intake? So you will either have a conversion or you will have an addition problem on the state exam. Okay, good. But just one. Just one. This is important though, because if we have a patient that, let's say they have congestive heart failure, that means their heart isn't pumping very well. And they had quite a bit of sodium, which means that we had to put fluid into the bloodstream, increasing the volume, which increases the blood pressure. The heart has to pump harder to push the fluid through because there's so much more of it. That can wear out the heart, right? So we put the patient on diuretics, which helps flush some of that fluid out. Well, that patient is going to be on intake and output. Oops. That patient is going to be on intake and output for that particular, for everything they take in, because we've got them on this medication. And if we don't do this right, and it looks like, because we made an addition error, it looks like 500 cc's went in, but only 200 came out. That tells us there's a serious problem with the patient. Either their heart isn't performing well or their kidneys aren't. And we're going to be calling in consults and doctors. That means bills, when all it was a simple addition error. So this is kind of important that we get this right. Good. Questions? Okay. We talked about this last class or last week. I don't remember. Yeah, it's raining out.
that's good.
So here, NPO means nothing by mouth. Remember, it's abbreviated Latin, not English. Don't try to make it bananas, pineapples, and oranges. Right? This is going to be important when you're reading chapter 8, but it's also important when we're talking about food and fluid intake. Now, if you've got a patient who is NPO and it's not specified, you need to be asking the nurse, is water allowed or ice chips allowed? Because sometimes we put people on NPO, nothing by mouth, and it truly means absolutely nothing. Nothing. We're going to give them all their fluids through the IVs so they don't dehydrate. Nothing by mouth. We're trying to rest the digestive system. But most of the time, if we've got somebody NPO, they're at risk for dehydration, right? Nothing in. They may dehydrate. So a lot of times if we have NPO, it's going to say, except for sips of water or except for ice chips. But you want to make sure that, you're clear on what kind of NPO we're talking about.
My first question was about the intake outtake form. So I noticed on here the type is in parentheses oral, IV, or tube feeding. I would assume the IV will just have like the measurements on the bag of how much.
Well, you wouldn't document that. That's going to be the nurse.
Okay.
So when you look at this intake and output form here on page 121, you'll see an area for time, type of intake, amount of intake, and our initials. Everybody uses this form, not just CNAs. So nurses would document IVs, tube feedings, irrigations, anything that goes in. CNAs are going to document the amount of fluid that the patient, juice, water, coffee, that type of thing. So this form is going to be used by everybody. Now for the test, it only has one line because it's a test. We're not going to get a whole big form. The reason that we have this, and you're going to see this on Monday when we empty the drainage bag, because we're going to have to document on the output. They have both of them here to see if you're going to document in the right space. Because if you document urine as intake, I don't want to be your patient. That's pretty high on my gross meter. I don't know about you, but I'm not planning on drinking any urine. Yeah.
And you mentioned irrigation. What is that?
Irrigation is the introduction of fluid through a cavity of some sort in the patient. This is only done by nurses. But if we have a wound, we may need to irrigate the wound to flush out any debris or secretions or infection. We may irrigate a bladder, which we push fluid in to circulate and then draw it out to help basically clean the inside of the bladder. We can irrigate eyes. We can irrigate ears. Pretty much any orifice can be irrigated. So that's just pushing fluid in to clean it and then withdraw fluid.
And my last question was about the NPO. I noticed through like word of mouth, like when some patients are NPO, sometimes they will request like a sponge and like soak it in water. I guess those are for the patients that could be considered possibly dehydrated.
Right.
Is that allowed for NPO as well?
It's going to be on a case-by-case, patient-by-patient basis. But the reason is, have you ever had a cotton mouth, dry mouth, where it's just like dry? Well, when you aren't taking in fluids, you're going to get cotton mouth. It's not a maybe, you're gonna, because you're dehydrated, you don't have enough fluid there. Saliva helps coat the inside of the mouth and makes it comfortable. So if we have a patient who's NPO, we will usually use some sort of like a toothette. Remember those touthettes? Dip it in water and they're not sucking on it. we're just swabbing it to moisten those membranes so they don't dry out and crack. There's also something called a lemon glycerin swab.
Yeah.
Supposedly it tastes a little bit better than the toothpaste. I don't know. But because it's glycerin tends to stick better to the membrane. Water is just going to kind of slide off or be absorbed. Glycerin is going to kind of stick better. The equivalent is if you've got chapped lips and you put water on it, doesn't really help. If you put chapstick on it, that chapstick kind of stays and moisturizes, same concept. And the lemon taste is supposed to be a little bit more palatable than mint. Thankfully, I've never had to experience it. But going off of what patients say, it doesn't help a whole lot.
So would you consider a patient on a feed tube with PO? Or is it something that would just have to do-
Depends. It absolutely depends. I have had patients on feeding tubes that are in PO, yes. I've also had patients on feeding tubes that also eat by mouth. The feeding tube is supplemental for nutrition reasons. Maybe they have malabsorption. Maybe they have a vomiting issue where things come back up. I mean, there's,
It's different for each patient.
yeah, give me 100 patients, I'll give you 101 variations. So unfortunately, I can't give you a one size fits all answer for any question you ask, because I can always come up with a patient it doesn't apply to. Good. Questions? Okay. All right, so here are our checkpoints for this particular skill. If you look along the side here, you'll see that our normal 4 apply. Our skill rules, our opening, our glove rules, and our closing all apply. We have our feeding resident checkpoints here we're going to go over in a minute, but we also have linen rules that applies to this particular skill because we're going to offer a clothing protector. And because we're offering a clothing protector, that means it's a linen, and that means we can't hold it against our clothing. So linen rules apply. Patient must be sitting fully upright. Our care plan says they're not. So we're going to ask them, hey, can you sit up, please? We're going to offer a hand wipe and clothing protector. We're going to sit down while we feed them. We're going to offer a drink before feeding and every 2 to 3 bites. Small bites. The spoon should be less than half full. We're going to feed them slowly. We'll have a conversation. When they refuse, and they will refuse after 4 bites, because they were told to refuse after 4 bites, you need to encourage them. Yeah, you don't want to say, oh, thank God, I got a million things to do and you're slowing me down. That's not what we want to do here. We want to encourage them. You want to use at least 2 forms of encouragement. I'm going to give you 3. Are you sure you don't want just 1 more bite? You can always get further with patients by being nice than being mean, always. So I turn up the charm. You sure you don't want just 1 more bite from me? Just 1 more. Come on. Usually I can get somebody to take at least 1 more bite. For the test, they're going to keep refusing because they were told to. The second thing I would do is tell the patient or ask the patient, do you want something different? Like, we've all had those days. We've all had those days. You make something, you take a bite, you're like, nope, not it. Not what I was looking for. And then you go searching for something else, right? Well, if you're a patient in a facility, you can't go searching for something else. So maybe the patient had 4 bites. They're like, no, it's not it. It's not what I'm looking for. So we can offer something else. Would you like something else? You want me to go get you something from the kitchen? The third thing that I would do is remind the patient that we do have snacks available if they get hungry later. So I usually use all 3. For the test, you need to use at least 2. Are you sure you don't want just 1 more? You want something else? Okay, if you get hungry later, we got snacks. Just let me know. Okay, good. We want to leave the area around the mouth clean. Well, that applies to every skill. And we're definitely going to document at the end. So remember, our documentation always comes at the end of the closing after washing our hands. And then what do we do after we document? Wash our hands again. You will not see that in this video. I'm getting ready to retape the videos. So you will not see that last hand washing in the video, but I want you to remember that we still do it. Okay, good. All right, so let me show you this, and then we're going to take a quick break. we have one more skill to learn. But it doesn't take us long. So if you look at the bottom of the page, how long does this skill, somebody with your level of experience, have to do this skill? How long does it take me? And that includes the whole opening sequence and the ending credits. So this does not take nearly as long as they give you. Even if you go in super slow motion, don't rush this.
If we go over our time, do we automatically fail?
We're gonna talk about that after break. So the answer to that, if you look in the very last column, for Monday, you see skills timing. We're gonna talk about that today. I actually ran out of time on Monday. Have that too.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Jones. My name is Patti. I'm your CNA today. Would you like a snack?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Can I ask you to sit up straight for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jones, let me get your left hand white. So that you can wipe your hands. Take that. Thank you very much. We dispose of it. Okay, can I offer you a clothing protector?
Yes.
Place it on your chest. Okay, it looks like we have pudding. How does that sound?
Great.
Very good. Can I offer you a drink before we get started?
Please. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you ready?
Yes.
There you go. Do you have any plans for this afternoon?
No.
They're showing a movie on the big screen in the activity room. Would you like me to get more information on that for you?
Yes, please.
Okay. How does the pudding taste?
Good.
Very good. Ready for another?
Yes.
Can I offer you a drink if you have something to drink?
Yes.
Ready for another bite?
Yes.
Ready for another bite? Are you sure you wouldn't have just one more bite?
Thank you.
Can I get you something else in the kitchen?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let me know if you get hungry later, and we'll get something to eat. We have this available on the menu.
Thank you.
And take the napkin. Okay. I'll remove this clothing protector from you, and we're gonna put this in your drink. When you go take care of your tray, I'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna place the tray back on your table. Is there anything else I can get for you? A magazine perhaps?
No, thank you.
Your call light is within reach. Please let me know if it's convenient, and I'm going to go wash my hands and document.
Okay, thank you.
After washing my hands, I'm going to document the amount of food that this patient ate. And the amount using my documentation form. I'll review the steps of my skill, make any corrections.
Wash my
and
hands.
Tell the evaluator my skill is done. Yeah, we're getting ready to retape these videos. There's very, very minor changes that have occurred, but they're from 2016, so they need to be updated anyway. But I am getting ready to tape those. All right. Any questions on any of that? Let's go ahead and take a break. Come back in 15 minutes. So at 20 after, We'll do Pericare. I've got a little bit to explain to you for Pericare. I'll show you that skill, and then you'll have the rest of the time to practice, okay?
I was looking over, just a second, I was looking over page 129 for the test registration. And I noticed on here, they mentioned something about RNs or healthcare training that are required. Is it required for them to actually have their CNA license?
No, it's if you complete the first semester of RN or LPN training, you're eligible to take the CNA exam. They could do it at any time under challengers, but they have a special category for completing nursing fundamentals is what it's called, at
I
the
see.
beginning of nursing training.
But it's not really required.
It's not required, no,
But they can challenge if they want to grow in that skill.
right?
Okay,
Yeah, so they can work as CNAs while they're going through nursing school.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna do it Friday when I get to leave. Is that? Yeah, I'm gonna register. Much of it, it's 155, and then fingerprints will be. I wait for the paychecks.
Yes. It's like 3 weeks out that they scheduled it, right?
Yeah, you gotta pay for it in advance.
I don't know, it's-
But encourage, I think you will. You ask good questions, you'll be fine. I just think the nerves will get us.
Yeah. Anybody got something?
When we're acting it out, I'm probably gonna hold my care plan in my hand.
The whole time.
Real loud, so too, I'm just gonna, I know I
Just
will,
be like, yes, so, this is what I need to do next.
Yeah.
Okay.
just so I'm not nervous. Probably.
But no, that's actually pretty smart, because a lot of people probably forget that they can reference their show.
You're allowed to hold it the whole time. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
A lot of us are staying after today to practice.
But she said we have like 45 minutes or so, like during the class time, right?
Yeah, today.
So we don't have to work to this class, so it's long. I'm happy that there's a lot of this time, a lot of class. So practice. Not yet. It's just- It's possible we don't have to spend some additional content, so just the every course that she went through. I was talking about the time given them. You still have it, right? It's all fire. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's her asking. Yeah. That's what I wanted to do, that's not how we do it. So it's not the it's whatever. Well, realistically.
Take care of plan. You're twins, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we stay and down across the picture care, all this stuff like that. We just get so like.
I want to, because I don't wanna forget.
Also for me, it's like, I have like a date set in stone, I'm gonna like force myself to study more.
I know, then cram.
And the guy goes like, oh, I'll take one of them, I'm gonna procrastinate personally. Like that.
Exactly. That's how
I'm
I.
gonna do it. I forget.
Mhm.
Let's do this.
Mhm. That's why I have to plan it.
It's great. Yeah, one brain, it's not even one. Florida's so weird, because when it rains, it doesn't cool down, it just gets like weird. But in other states, it actually cools down. Really? Is it the same? It's far here and brighter. And it gets really fun. I feel like it's worse here as far as humidity, but they're like more fun tornadoes. Yeah, I'm trying.
Fill up the. Yesterday, I felt like I was looking at it forever. With the feeding one, we don't need to practice that.
Right. And then there's one in there that the blood pressure that's not gonna be on. It's not supposed to. So
That's just in the, and it's gonna do like we just did on our homework, normal, abnormal.
Yeah.
Practice. In class and then say. A little bit after. Great. The wheelchair, I'm for it.
Wheelchair, not worried
Yeah,
about either.
when I've done the wheelchair, many times.
I do that at work with the mini kids, so it's nothing. for me.
Yeah, and I've done that at work, you know. You've done it. I've done it with a lady that,
I just wanna put my hands on the gate belt. I've never done that because at the schools, the physical therapist does it. They don't even let us touch them. We're just lifting the kids without gate belts. So,
Which is not really safe.
no. No. So I just wanna see it, even if I put it around myself, just so I know. I don't wanna be at the test going, I don't know how to put this on you, so give me a second. Let me put this around your waist.
And we have it,
No, I'm gonna do it Friday. That's what I was telling her.
we just talked about that.
yeah, I haven't.
I gotta wait till I get paid.
I wish you had like a stand-up pointer. You know, practically.
A what?
A stand-up pointer.
Taylor?
Yeah, it's like a stand-up pointer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I might play that. Both of them are like,
I'm still learning the,
You always have a second person with you on the.
Yeah.
we're trying to do it by myself, unless you're in home care. Sometimes you
Yeah.
don't.
True.
I actually learned how to use a pointer by myself in home care, which is totally not allowed.
I learned it, well, I've done it over in the hospital, and then like when my dad started getting sick and eventually became paralyzed, like. I had to clear that, because it's just too much.
Don't you want certification to use a pointer?
My company trained me.
Yeah, I just trained at the school with it.
I just figured out what buttons.
It's not my favorite thing to
And what
do.
they cut.
Oh,
It's
It's not at all.
inappropriate.
I always had my hand on it though,
Yeah.
because it could wobble,
Mhm.
especially if they're paralyzed from the neck down. That's the kids I have in my class and they will go like this or. So you just make sure you're like,
Make sure you're nice and centered
yeah,
and not like.
sure your legs not
Thank
hanging
you.
out.
Definitely not my favorite.
True. No, not when you're in a rush either. It's a pain in the ass, it really is. So it saves you back.
Oh, yeah.
It does.
I just don't like using the pointer if the patient's like super stiff. And you don't want to use it. Cause then you're looking at your pointer basically.
Yeah.
They're like so.
I
They
just
get
usually-
left around the pole.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're like watching out, making sure that like it's shooting the head with their lips.
So you guys all do home health.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
There's a lot of gray area though, I feel like. It's
Yeah.
sort of like running these spots and stuff, it's just. Especially like. Stuff like that, like. Treated like a child should be like a keeper, and just like. Yeah.
That's for
My views of. What else. And you're for your room. Why not to clean your room?
I had a client actually complain to me. She was venting about better care, but not about people. But oh, this person is good. She had a cup of coffee. She left it in the sink, and she took care of the person, which is great. But she didn't wash her plate after herself or wash her cup. So just literally not a big deal. It is a that's not taking from the
Right.
bathroom.
So like, but then that's like the family members like they can put stuff on it for them as well. It's like if they could, they used to shoot their head and then you look over and you like put off and sit they can like expect you to kind of like it's just for the client. This all of my patients, it's not for your entire family.
One of my clients, his daughter is exposed to it. She has a private daycare. And so when she puts breakfast for her before and all of their cups and dishes, like they don't wash these dishes. Yes, like as I'm washing his personal stuff. Yes, I'm and then I play a kitchen. vacuuming, and I'm doing all this stuff.
No, you were doing way too much.
I'm nice about it,
Me too.
but I'm just like, you don't think this? Please, my little 2 cent raise for this place.
Well, sometimes I have to just tell them. Have a care plan. This has already been established. Like, requested services. I'm following what you agreed to. If there's any changes, you need to call the office, go over it with them.
And then we can adjust the care plan accordingly with that particular patient for the time.
Well, no, they're not supposed to be, they're not supposed to be coming up after their terrible family, back in their house, like, no, that is not white housekeeping. White housekeeping is like doing what they're changing the things, or like, or cleaning the dishes up after your patient, or, wipe it down the counter, like, after you put them like that, like, I mean, or like characters that like things up to like CNA, becoming CNA, it's like one not house.
And say money.
One lady had me, she's like, well, that's our house, like,
That's how they practice it.
and they got ours, and then one lady mostly to fill out all our paperwork and like all of it. No, they're not doing it. No, their insurance.
My lady wanted me to move the furniture around her back,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to, like, excuse me.
Yeah,
That's what it's.
not
Wow.
like,
Nervy.
Or no, if it's gross. Have you? Like straight, like.
Yes. My current one.
Girl, my first time in there, it was my last time there.
Not the,
Did they ask you to
Not my
take the dog
patient.
out?
not my patient,
No, they
but
just did what the dogs go all like us. And then you never change it. It's not gets you faces when you walk in. It's like my eyes are literally changing up like the.
It's like that.
I walked in, it was like, oh my God. And then
it has gotten better,
all y'all are just sitting there and around like, eating whatever. I'm like, there's nobody else.
Wow.
I'm like, am I
It's
tripping?
better, but that's another thing. They use two different companies, and the other company, they have like pet care is the care plan.
Yeah,
So I'm doing that as a first thing, which I'm not supposed to be. Now,
I
if
know,
you
I know.
report it to my agency, but
I got it.
she was, her other caregivers took her down 6 or 7 times a day, and I was like, I will not be doing that. It's not gonna happen.
Well, it's not warm in here now.
It's terrible they do that.
I mean, it's terrible, but can you have not being moved like that? But what it is, it's not good. No argument.
Honestly, I don't know. For me, it's relaxing.
What?
But it's like,
I mean, yeah, but not after all of that.
Now I say,
And cleaning the house, like, you're not supposed to be doing all that.
Okay. Patricia, just to, go over with you real quick before we start back. This wheelchair, you saw how easy that one
Yeah.
opened? This wheelchair doesn't open as easy,
Oh.
even with the wheels off, so you have to push down on the
Okay.
seat. So you would just push down on the bars of the seat.
okay.
It closes the same way.
All right, and you said that it locks the same way.
Yeah, it's, when you lock it, that one, if you look at that one, you push forward on the levers to lock. This one, actually,
This one you push forward too, right?
yeah, that one you push back. That one you push back.
Um,
Yeah. This one, it's opposite. This one you push forward.
Okay.
You just pay attention to the metal bars.
Gotcha.
Whichever way pushes the bar into the wheel, it's locked.
Thank you. Okay. Are those wheelchairs like less used? Cause I know I see all of like those wheelchairs all the time.
There are,
Very strong.
oh my gosh, there are literally hundreds of different wheelchairs out there. There are probably I would say at least 25 different wheelchair manufacturers, and they all have different models, different price points, different colors, different features. There's a wheelchair for every possibility. So they're all going to work just a little bit different. Kind of like cars.
Yes.
Right? So all cars do the same thing. They get you from point A to point B. I personally would like a Ferrari.
Don't you have the fancy sports car already?
I do.
She does.
I like I like my car. I like my car. But you know, I mean, it's different than a Honda Accord, right? That's different from an F-150 pickup truck. They all do the same thing. You get in them, you drive from point A to point B, but they have different features, right? So same thing with wheelchairs. Okay.
Also, before the end of class, can I have the review chapter sheets for 4 and 5, please?
Sure. Remind me at the end, and I've got them up here. I'll get them for you. And I've got 6 for you guys today too. So let's go to page 56 for a moment. So the question that we heard right before break, I'm gonna leave that up there for a minute. Right before break was what happens if you time out? Bless you. So when you're looking at the skill set, when you get your skill set from the state exam, it's going to have this part on it. It doesn't have this part. I put this on for you guys. This is your timing formula for this particular skill set. So let me explain to you what this formula is and how it's used. And this is what you see on the bottom, page 56, the first column. So each skill has a time associated with it that you should be able to perform the skill within. We've gone over these. For instance, feeding, we said was 9 minutes, right? So every skill has a time associated with it that you should be able to perform the skill within. So when you get a skill set with 3 skills, that means each one of them is going to have a different time. So if you look at this skill set here, we have measure and record respiration. So on page 56, in the first column, halfway down, you'll see a little graph. Look up respirations. How much time do we have? 5 minutes. Okay, so write 5 somewhere. The second skill is make an occupied bed. How much time would we have for that? 14 minutes. So 5 plus 14 is 19. Last one is change position to supported side lying. 8 minutes. So 19 and plus 8 is 27. So right now, just based on the timing of these 3 skills, we would have 27 minutes to do this skill set. But wait, there's more. They're going to give you 3 minutes for hand washing. So that's in addition to this. So 27 plus 3 is 30. But wait, there's more. They're also going to give you 5 minutes for thinking time, transition time, reading the care plan, thinking about your skill, making corrections. 5 minutes for that. So this skill set would actually give us 35 minutes, which is what you see here on the bottom. 35 minutes to do this skill set. So it's not, when you're taking the test, you're going to get a total time, 35 minutes. It's not per skill. So you're not going to time out of a skill. When you get to 30 minutes, they're going to tell you 5-minute warning. So now you want to get as many checkpoints in that last 5 minutes as you can. Good? Make sense? But if you get all the way to 35 minutes and you didn't finish your last skill, it's not an automatic failure. You only get deficiencies for any item that didn't get checked off. That's it. So you want to get as many checkpoints in as possible if you get that 5-minute warning. And guys, I can go through the closing in like 20 seconds. And if you remember, half of every skill is the opening and the closing. Make sense? So you really want to know your opening. Like you've got to have that down cold. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. How are you? I'm here to whatever. Is that okay? Close curtain, wash hands, get supplies. You should be able to recite that in your sleep. I should come to your house at 1:30 tomorrow morning, wake you up and say, quick, what's the opening? And you should be able to recite it that quick without thinking about it. If you can't do that, you're not ready for the test because you're going to eat up a lot of time by, what do I have to do first? Do I close the curtain first? Do I wash my hands first? Do I get my supplies? You would eat up all your time. If you know the steps and you do the steps, you get that opening down to 20 seconds. If you got 9 minutes to do a skill and it took 20 seconds to do the opening and 30 seconds to do the closing, you've still got 8 minutes to do the skill. Make sense? So learn your opening and your closing so well you don't have to think about it. You should just be able to roll right into it. Now, the closing is a little bit more complex. There's a whole lot more steps. It takes longer to go through. Thank you very much, Miss Jones. Is there anything else I can get for you? Are you comfortable? Would you like a magazine? Here's your call light. Your environment's clean. Open your curtain. Go wash my hands. Document if I have to. Wash them again. It takes a little bit longer. It's a lot more steps. But what I just went through was still less than 15 seconds. It's all about practice. And that's the one thing I can't do for you is practice. When you're practicing, don't skip steps. Do the opening, the whole thing. Knock, knock, knock. Hi, Miss Jones. My name is Patty. I'm your CNA today. I'm here to whatever. Is that okay? Close curtain, wash hands. Go over and close the curtain. Guys, you paid the money to be in this classroom to practice. So let me give you this for so that you understand. Okay. You guys paid $350 to sit in this classroom, and you get the online program as part of that, and your books are included in that $350. I charge $150 for that online classroom or that online course. So let's take your $350 and subtract out $150 because that's what you paid for the online. The online, you have to buy your books. So let's subtract out $50 for the books. So that means if you take $350 minus $150, that's $200, minus $50 for the books, that's $150. $150 of what you paid is to practice. That is the only thing that you are getting different from what those other people are getting. The practice. They're getting the same. Look, I'm talking to the camera that's live streamed into that online course. I got people on YouTube right now watching. They are getting the same thing that you're getting with me talking. The only thing that's different is you guys get to practice here with these supplies. That's what you paid the money for. So if you're not actually practicing here with the supplies, you kind of wasted your $150. Does that make sense? So make the most of your practice. Make the most of it. Otherwise, you could have just tuned in for free. So do your opening. Do it so often you know it. Do your closing. Do it so often you know it. Don't skip steps. Do them. And if you do them, you are going to do fantastic on the test. It's going to be virtually impossible for you to fail because you put the time in. Make sense? That's how you don't time out. My students never time out, ever, ever. The only way you would time out is if you started the skill over and over and over and over again. And that's going to annoy the evaluators because where do they want to be? Yeah, absolutely. So you can start your skills over. Absolutely. If you completely mess it up from beginning, if you're just like, I am really bad at this. this. I want to start over. So let's let's start out. You can do that. You are allowed to do that, but you're eating up your time. And those evaluators don't want to be there. So my students are usually a little bit better than that. You've got a general idea of how things should go. So you generally don't start things over. Okay. Now, here's the problem. You guys don't know how well prepared you are. You have nothing to gauge yourself against, nothing. When you get to the testing center and you see, you're going to be partnered with a stranger and you're going to sit back and watch how they're doing their skills. And you're going to go, there's nobody to tell. You're going to be absolutely amazed. They did that wrong. They didn't do this. Oh my gosh. You guys are well prepared for the test. You can identify errors. If you can identify errors, that tells me you know the right way to do things. Okay. You guys are well prepared. You won't realize that though until you go to test. And most of my students come back and tell me, you know what I saw? So let me give you one. Where's the gate belt go? Whose waist? Okay. So one of my students went to a testing center not too long ago. And the person that was performing the skill was ambulate with the gate belt. They were supposed to put the gate belt around the patient's waist, get them up, walk them 5 steps forward, turn around, back to the chair. Super easy, right? So the person that was doing the skill never did the opening, just walked over, grabbed the gate belt, came over to my patient that was sitting there, put the gate belt around them, their chest, looked at him, thought that doesn't look right, took it off, put it around their waist, had the patient hold the gate belt to stand up.
Oh, wow.
I was hoping you weren't gonna say they put it on themselves. Right? I was really hoping she was not gonna say that.
Yep. Yeah. And my students, like, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't real sure what to do with that. So you guys don't realize how well prepared you actually are. You just don't. You have no idea. You will know when you get to the test. You'll be calling me up going, OMG. Let me tell you what I saw. Yeah. Or you'll go, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So you guys, you're okay, but you got to practice and you got to put the time in, but you're not going to time out. Okay. Good. Questions? Tell me the stories. I like to pass them on. All right. So let's go to page 110, please. All right, so our care plan at the top of the page, just a short care plan, guys. Eating was longer than this. So our care plan at the top of the page says the female patient has been incontinent of urine and needs perinatal care. The pad under the resident is wet, but the hospital gown and bedding is dry. This is a fairy tale. It never happens like this. But we'll take the gift they give us for the test. The gown and bedding is dry. We don't have to change it. Yay. But in a clinical setting, if you're doing Pericare, you're probably changing it all. And that's okay. We don't have to do that for the test because our care plan says. They're making it easy because the evaluators want to be at home in their pool. Right, right. You're starting to get it, right? Yeah, we want them to be happy. So we want to know how to do these skills so well that we go in and get them done and they are super excited because they're one step closer to home. Okay. You never want them to be upset at you. It's not a good day. All right, so this is easy. The patient is incontinent of urine and needs Pericare. That's pretty much it. That's what we're doing here. But we have to understand what Pericare actually is. So this is a washing skill. So our washing rules all apply, right? Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. Don't get your surface wet. So we need to put something underneath the patient so that we're not getting the bed wet. We don't add soap to the basin. Basins are no soap zones. When we get water, we check it. Who else checks it? Patient checks it. So all these rules apply. We know these rules. We've seen these rules. We've done these rules. So these rules all apply. Nothing has changed here. We are going to use the leaves method again. We learned that on Monday with partial bed bath. So we're going to use that method again because this is a wet body opening. So we'll get there in just a moment. So those of you at home, there's the link for washing rules. I have a whole video on this, guys. You can watch it. But let's talk about incontinence. This is why I love making these slides. It just makes this so much easier. A picture really is worth 1,000 words. If I had to stand up here and describe this to you, which is what I used to do, I had no on-screen graphics before October. So the last 14 years, I was just talking. This helps tremendously because now you can actually see it. You don't have to visualize it. So 5th grade anatomy review, 5th grade. Remember, this is a whole lot more complex than what I'm telling you. We're going to simplify it for our purposes because that's all we need is the 5th grade version here. You have 2 kidneys. Those kidneys filter blood 24 hours a day. They're never offline. They're always working. No coffee breaks, no vacations. It's the work schedule that you don't want, but your kidneys have got it. They work 24 hours a day. And when they filter blood, they remove waste particles and create urine. That urine drips down tubes, drip, 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 drip as the urine is created. Those tubes are called ureters. Those drips collect in a Ziploc bag that we call a bladder. All your bladder is a Ziploc bag that holds urine. That's it. Now the urine stays there because we got a little valve at the bottom in our urethra. That little valve, as long as it's closed, keeps, just like a Ziploc bag, when the zip is closed, it keeps the stuff inside. Open the zip, what happens to the stuff? Comes out. That's what this valve does. So as long as the valve is closed, urine stays in the bladder. When you go to the bathroom, the valve opens and the urine comes out. When you're done going to the bathroom, the valve closes again. How often do the kidneys work? So urine is created. All those drips fall into 24/7. Valve keeps it closed. Everybody good? 5th grade review. So when we're incontinent, that whole system still works. Nothing has changed. Kidneys still filter blood 24 hours a day. Still produce drips of urine 24 hours a day. Those drips still go into the bladder 24 hours a day. What's broken is the valve. So where do those drips go? Yeah, everywhere. Out. Out. How often do they go out? There it is. Your incontinent patients are going to be wet all the time. If you've got a patient who is dry, 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 really, really wet, that is not an incontinent patient. That is incompetent staff members who are not taking that patient to the bathroom. Incontinence and incompetence are often confused. If you've got a patient who is dry, 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 that valve works. That is not an incontinent patient. But this patient is. Valve is broken. But the valve is a muscle. If I sit on the couch all day, every day, and never move, I'm going to get flabby and useless. And if I try to get up, I'm probably not going to get very far because my muscles are weak and out of shape and not really active and not working properly, right? But if I did a little exercise, started walking a little bit every day, started moving my legs when I'm sitting on the couch, I could strengthen that muscle. And when I try to get up and walk, it would move again, right? That is a muscle. So if you've got an incontinent patient, if we work on improving the muscle, we can actually help our patient become continent. This requires taking the patient to the bathroom every 2 hours around the clock. We're waking them up at 2 a.m. and taking them to the bathroom. We're waking them up at 4 a.m. and taking them to the bathroom. And we're waking them up at 6 a.m. and taking them to the bathroom every 2 hours around the clock. Don't miss any. When you do that, you're exercising that valve. In 3 to 5 days, the patient will start to regain some bladder control again. Now, this is good news because adult urine is not like baby urine. Baby urine, we don't even call urine. We call it something cute like tinkle or TT or something like that, right? We don't even call it urine. Because babies, they're only eating what we give them: formula, breast milk, cereal, bombs, right? We give babies very bland food. So their urine is very mild because what goes in must come out. So the acidity of our urine is based on what we eat, the acid in what we eat. Now, adults, we eat acid all the time. Pretty much everything that we eat that tastes good has some sort of acid in it. That acid is going to be excreted through your urine, and acid against the skin is not good. So babies, you can put a diaper on their tush, put them to bed, wake them up 8 hours later, and they still have skin. You do that with an adult, they will not have skin because the acid in the urine is going to affect the skin. It'll eat it. Think about acid. What does acid do? It burns. So when we have an incontinent patient, we have to clean them every 2 hours around the clock. So 2 a.m., we're cleaning them. 4 a.m., we're cleaning them. 6 a.m., we're cleaning them. Well, wait a minute. I told you that if we got them up to the bathroom every 2 hours around the clock, we could fix this problem. We're already waking them up to clean them. So it's not that much of a hardship to get them up and to the bathroom at the same time. And then we solve the problem. Not really much extra work there. Good? Makes sense? Oops. You guys understand this? So incontinent patients are always going to be wet 24/7. I'm going to tell you a story about this. This is a true story right here, Central Florida. There was a young man who was working in assisted living. Patient was incontinent. The young man was told to perform Pericare. He goes in and cleans the front, turns the patient over to clean the back. And when he turned the patient over, she wet a little bit because posture, right? Urine laying in the bladder. When you change posture, urine moves, it's liquid, and it came out. He was so enraged that she had disrespected him by peeing on him that he beat her to death. Yep. Beat her to death because he did not understand that this is a 24/7 problem. This should not have been anybody that was allowed near another human, much less a human that needed assistance. So I say these things for a reason. I need you to have a clear understanding of what we're working with so that your misconceptions are overcome. Okay. 24/7, this patient is going to be wet. You're going to clean them, turn them on their side, and they're probably going to go a little bit more because urine is a liquid. And as it's laying in the bottom of the bladder, when you turn the patient, it shifts. It's probably going to come out. No problem. We're just going to clean them. Good? Make sense? Questions? Don't beat your patients. Oh, yeah.
I hope he doesn't. That's what I'm saying.
Do you think that they would do like mental evaluations or background checks on people when they're
So do you remember the state test application? You guys remember the application I handed you on page 4? I'm sorry, 4. There, I told you there were questions I could not help you answer, and they were on mental health. Have you received mental health treatment? Do you have a substance abuse disorder? It's because healthcare is a stressful occupation. If you don't have coping mechanisms, it's probably not the right field for you. Right? So there's questions you have to answer in order to take the certification exam, specifically because of that. But no, employers aren't doing emotional inventories when you go for. Oh yeah, I think if law enforcement you have to pass a psych eval. I think healthcare you should also have to pass a psych eval. But most healthcare workers would say the same thing about patients, right? Patients are crazier than we are, so
Go there for vacations.
yeah. All right. So if we have a patient that's wet all the time when they're out of bed, an adult brief is appropriate because you don't want to wet yourself when you're out in public. That just makes sense. It's a dignity issue, right? We don't call them diapers. This is not a child. They are called adult briefs. They might be called depends. Some people call them pull-ups. Those are all fine. We do not use the word diaper. Good. But the problem here is with that adult brief. That adult brief is going to hold in body heat. Remember how hot people are? How hot are people? 98.6. Yeah. 97.6 and 99.6 is kind of our range, but we kind of shortcut that to 98.6. So congratulations, you're all hot. We're all hot. 98.6 degrees. That means that plastic, because it's waterproof, that plastic's going to hold in that body heat. It's also going to hold the urine acid right against the skin and it blocks out light. So we end up with warm, dark, moist. What grows there? Everything bad. So we have acid against the skin and we have the ideal environment for pathogens. So this is not a good situation. So we need to clean and change this person every 2 hours around the clock. But because of the risks here, there's actually a better way when they're in bed. Now, when they're out of bed, this is dignity. We're going to use this. But if they're in bed, there's a better way. If somebody is in bed, most of the time, we're going to keep them open to air on an incontinence pad. That pad is going to pull the urine out away from the skin. It allows light and air to circulate, and it doesn't trap heat in. So you have fewer skin issues when your patient is open to air on a pad. So in bed, you may have an order for your patient to be open to air on a pad, out of bed adult brief. Now, some patients aren't comfortable with this, and that's okay. We can use adult briefs while they're in bed, but this is preferred if your patient is comfortable enough with it. But let's think about that incontinence pad for a second. It's holding urine. How hot did we say people are? All right, so 98.6 degrees is how hot my body is. My urine is actually a little bit hotter. Well, because it's actually held right here next to my furnace. So urine coming out about 101, 102 degrees. Yeah. Well, remember, we're 98. It's not that much further. 100, 101 degrees, somewhere in there. So when that 100, let's just make it 100. When that 100-degree urine hits 72-degree air, remember room temperature always wins. So what's going to happen to that urine?
Cool down.
It's going to cool down. Yeah. So that pad is going to feel cold, wet, and a little slimy. If you were laying on that pad, what would you want done? Yeah. So that's the very first thing we're going to do here. We're going to change the pad and get our patient on a dry pad. But we got a wet butt on a clean pad. So we're going to clean the front, we're going to clean the back, and then we're going to change the pad again. So we have a clean butt on a clean pad at the end of the stay. Good? Makes sense? So let's change the pad first. So we're going to use the leaves method again because this is definitely a wet body opening. Remember, it qualifies under genitals. So we're going to use that same leaves method. And we're going to use 5 leaves for this skill. The way that we do this, the order that we do this is here. We're going to go down the middle. Now, this is a one-way trip. Don't go back up. One way. Down the middle, move away, fold your leaf. Then you're going to go down one side on the outside. This is your labia area. Fold your leaf. Excuse me. The other labia, fold your leaf. And then we're going to go right here between the leg and the groin, that skin fold, that crease, top to bottom, fold your leaf, top to bottom. So middle, side, side, skin fold, skin fold. One leaf for each one. Good? Questions? No? Oh. Please hold. There is a problem. Houston. Okay. I'm not sure why that's not showing. All right, well, apparently my OBS has stopped here. Hold on one second, guys. Please hold, YouTube world. I really need a production assistant to do this. All right. There we go. All right, Pericare. So these are our steps for Pericare. We're going to change the chucks out first because we want our patient to be comfortable. We're going to use the leaves method and we're going to change the leaf for each stroke. And we're always going to clean from front to back, or in this case, top to bottom, never go back up. One-way trip. We're going to clean down the middle, the outer labia on each side, and the skin fold on each side, and never move back up. Whatever we wash, we rinse. Whatever we rinse, we dry. Turn the patient onto their side, and we're going to clean the back side, moving upward away from the anal opening. Now, that butt crack is going to channel urine. So we're going to clean the crack from the anal opening up. We're going to fold our leaf. We're going to clean one cheek, fold our leaf, clean the other cheek. And then we want to go once more up that crack. Because remember, when we turn the patient over, we might have a little leakage. So we want to clean that area twice because there may be some leakage. Urine leakage. Good? Make sense? Okay. And then we'll change that pad out one last time so we have a clean bottom on a clean pad for the next 2 hours. Because how often are we doing this? Around the clock. Good. Questions? I'm going to show you the video for this one because it has good close-ups and it'll show you exactly how to accomplish this. And then I'll give you your review sheets and you will have the rest of the class to practice. We only have 3 skills left, guys. Just 3. And 2 of those are repeats of something we've already learned. We're going to learn catheter care, which is Pericare with an extra step. We're going to learn range of motion, which we've learned 2 other range of motions, and we're going to learn how to empty the urinary drainage bag. So Monday's class will not have a lot of time and skills, about an hour and a half, maybe. Okay, if you see I get this entire skill done in 11 minutes, what does your skills book say for time? Yeah. Couldn't take that long. Miss Jones, my name is Patti. I'm your CNA today. How are you? Wonderful. I need to do Pericare. Is that okay? Okay, let me close your curtain, wash my hands, get my supplies, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm going to start out with a barrier. This gives me a clean place to place my clean supplies. So I'll place the barrier on the overhead table. And now I'll start gathering my supplies. I'm going to need 2 cups, 4 washcloths, a privacy blanket, a towel, place these items on the overhead table. I'll need a basin and soap. And I'm going to need a set of gloves. Okay, Miss Jones, let me go fill the basin. I'll use a paper towel to turn the water on. Make sure it's warm, not hot, not cold, just warm. Miss Jones, would you like to check the water temperature and make sure it's okay? It's good? Good. Place my washcloths in the water. Okay, Miss Jones, I'm going to place this privacy blanket over you. This is going to help keep you warm and protect your privacy while we do this skill. I'm going to spread the blanket out, being careful not to shake it or snap it. And then I'm going to pull your sheet down to about your knees. Now I'll get my chucks ready for use. I'm going to unfold the chucks, fold it up lengthwise, and roll it toward me. And I'll repeat that with the second one. Clean rolls toward me, dirty rolls away. So I'll get my gloves on. Okay, Ms. Jones, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to scoot toward me. And we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can change the chuck that's underneath. I'll place one of the chucks on the bed. Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? Thank you. And roll up on your left side. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to roll the dirty chucks toward the patient. Tuck it under her hip. Unroll the clean one. And tuck it under the sword. Ms. Jones, can you roll back onto your back, please? Thank you. And scoot to the middle of the bed. Okay, I'll come around to the other side of the bed now. Ms. Jones, can you scoot toward me, please? And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. We'll remove the soil chucks from the bed and unroll the clean one. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, we're going to start cleaning now. I'm going to roll your blanket up to about your waist. This is going to expose you. Please let me know if you're uncomfortable in any way. So I'll roll the blanket up. And on the way, I'm going to try to get that gown rolled inside the blanket so that exposes only the period area. I'll cover her upper legs with a towel. And then get my first washcloth. So wring this out. And so 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to clean now. I'll use the heel of my hand at the top of her berry area and my index and middle finger to spread her slightly open so I can clean down the inside middle, top to bottom, and then we'll fold that leaf over. We're going to clean the outside labia, top to bottom, down one side, and fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the labia, top to bottom, fold that leaf over. The fourth leaf is gonna clean this area between the leg and the groin, the skin fold. Top to bottom, we're gonna fold that over, and we'll repeat it on this side, top to bottom. Now we'll place the washcloth back on the area. The second washcloth, we're gonna wring out. And we're gonna rinse all of those areas the same way we wash. So we're gonna hold it slightly open to clean down the middle, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're gonna rinse down one side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. Rinse the other side of the labia, top to bottom. Fold that over. We're going to rinse the skin fold down one side, top to bottom. Fold that over. And the other skin fold, top to bottom. We'll set that aside. Now we're going to dry all of those areas using short, soft strokes or a gentle pat. Going to unroll the blanket, which will place her gown back over her legs. Okay, Mrs. Jones, I'm going to scoot you toward me now, and we're going to roll you onto your left side so I can clean your back side. I'm going to scoot toward me. We'll roll you over onto your left side. 1, 2, 3. The evaluator will hold the mannequin in place for you to complete your cleaning of the patient's backside. Okay, I'm going to take the fourth washcloth, bring it out really well, and we're going to soak 4 corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to start at the angle opening and go up the center crease, right up the middle, and we'll fold that leaf over. The second leaf will clean one buttocks. We're going to fold that over. The third leaf will clean the other side of the buttock. We'll fold that leaf over. And the fourth leaf will clean from the angle opening up the center crease one last time. We're going to set that aside. Whenever we wash, we rinse. So I'll bring that out. And I'm going to rinse the same way we wash. So from the angle opening up the center crease, fold that over. 1 buttocks, fold that over. The other side of the buttocks, fold that over. And once more up the center crease. And then we'll dry all of those areas. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm going to change that pad out from under you. So you're on a nice clean pad. We'll roll the soiled chucks toward the patient and cut the under her hip. Unroll the clean chucks. And tuck it under the soil. Ms. Jones, come on back, please. And scoot to the middle. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jones, go ahead and scoot toward me. And roll up on your right side. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We'll remove the soil chucks from the back. And unroll them. Go ahead and scoot back to the middle, please. This is going to be thrown away. Okay, Ms. Jones, I need to put all of my soiled items away and clean my basin. I'll be back in just a moment to get you situated. These items will go in dirty linen. And the basin is going to be cleaned the same as we clean everything else. We'll dump the water into the sink. Rinse the basin. Take it up with a paper towel and dry the inside. We'll discard that paper towel. We'll dry the outside. And discard that paper towel. And then we'll get the soap. I'll use the paper towel to open the door and store the basin back inside. These paper towels will now go away. Barrier is going to be disposed of. And now I can remove my gloves. Okay, Ms. Jones, I'm now going to gather the privacy blanket up and pull your sheet back up. So I'll collect the privacy blanket by lifting from the bottom or underside of the blanket. So pull the sheet up and ball the blanket up into a ball. That way no trailing edges will contaminate other surfaces. Okay, Ms. Jones, let me go for this in 30 minutes. Are you comfortable? Is there anything else I can get for you while I'm here? Like a magazine? Okay, here's your call light. If you should need anything at all, please let me know. I'm going to go open your curtain and wash my hands. After washing my hands, I'll think about the steps of my skill, make any corrections, and then let the evaluator know my skill is done.
All right, any questions?
Does that work the same with like inflow and catheter?
So catheter care, we're actually going to cover on Monday. And I'm going to go over the different types of catheters, what the differences are, and how to clean the peri area with a catheter versus without. So that'll all be covered. Male pericare is covered in your skills book on page 101. I'm sorry, 111. I'm sorry. You see it at the bottom of the first column. The thing to remember about male pericare is that we put everything back where we find it. So if they're uncircumcised and you retract the foreskin to clean underneath, make sure you replace the foreskin where you found it. What's that? Did you watch the video? Okay. Good. Questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and give you your review sheet for today, and the rest of the class will be practice. Nobody has any questions for me? Sure, just let me know which ones you need, and if I don't have enough, I can print some. So everybody that needs review sheets, let me know what, come up to me and let me give you what you need. All right, so YouTube world, I don't see any questions. Let me just pull this up to make sure. Okay, I don't see any questions from you guys. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. Join us tomorrow for our live question and answer session at 3 p.m. I'll give a mini lesson and then we'll answer questions. And then Tuesday, don't forget Tuesday is our game show. We only do it on the first and third Tuesday of every month, and we're giving prizes. So make sure you join us for that. And otherwise, I'll be back in class on Monday at 9 for the last week. So you guys graduate next week. Last 2 sessions or 2 classes for this session. All right. Until next time, happy caregiving.